Sort of coming chapter 10:10. In the early morning the sky is bright. The Taoist priest who was about to get out of bed began to act as a demon. I saw the Taoist priest holding a peachwood sword, stepping on the gang and chanting a Tao Ju copied from nowhere. Please listen to me, there is too much immortality in the ancient times, the sun and the moon are shining together, the mountains and rivers are magnificent, and it is made into a golden elixir with no leaks and fights with dragons and snakes. The Taoist priest shook out a sweeping leg, rolled up some fallen leaves on the ground, and then a golden rooster stood alone, handing out a sword in his right hand, and a leaf just stopped at the tip of the sword. Clear, light, turbid, heavy, yin and yang, the sky is high and the earth is thick and spiritual, a little spiritual light makes a candle like a cloud blooming all over the sky, rushing like a decree, put the universe into one sleeve. The Taoist priest shook his sword flower through his sleeve with his left hand, twisted his body, pointed the sword to the sky, and at the same time tried to roll the leaf into his sleeve, probably because he had not mastered his strength. The leaf swirled in the air but failed to do so. It's okay to put it in the sleeve. The Taoist priest has his own remedy, a jump, a high kick, the fingers of the left hand close together and the tip of the sword points elsewhere. The wine, color, wealth and energy are far away. Yun Ping Yio Sun Moon Companion, pure yang accumulates yin virtue. Tianguan turns the axis of the earth, Qiangjing Xinjiu and Master Fengxian is here to rescue. Shui Rui was speechless for a long time, and suddenly felt a little pity for this Taoist priest who seemed to go mad after drinking a little wine. Yesterday the Taoist priest and the young man who said the picture in the spring were so snobbish, more or less difficult. She sighed, "Don't mess around like that, it'll just drive you out of the house." I saw that the Taoist priest finally stopped his figure, put one hand behind him, put the other hand and fingers together in front of him, and snorted coldly with his nasal voice. Shui Rui is not happy all of a sudden. "You dare to make further progress, can you really be an old lady begging you to stay?" The middle-aged Taoist priest put away the peachwood sword and threw it at the mud. He was thinking about the sword technique of hitting the ground with one hand, but the strength was not enough or the angle was wrong. Still falling. Shui Rui still had some grudges in her heart and asked, "Are you really able to draw that kind of 3 official talismans?" Last night she asked Judge Hong and Ji Xiaoping. The 2 high-ranking officials of the city god temple shook their heads, saying that this kind of talisman was unheard of. In the end, Judge Hong only said that maybe the talismans on the top of the mountain should not have secret legends, and they must be in the upper 5 realms, which may be feasible. Otherwise, ordinary cultivators of talismans, even the kind of land gods with profound Taoism, would not be able to draw such effects. Talisman. The Taoist priest shook his head and pointed to the peachwood sword lying on the ground. "You can draw a talisman, but you are not very sure about the talisman. Even if you use the talisman to successfully connect yin and yang, pass the gentleman of the temple of the city god, and then want to pass the test in the underworld, it is extremely difficult, and to use an inappropriate analogy, it is somewhat similar to beheading the officials of this dynasty with the sword of Shangfang from the previous dynasty." Shui Rui immediately raised her eyebrows. She was indeed a liar. The Taoist priest immediately added, "But the poor Taoist has a good friend who is amazing. He has great supernatural powers and can speak and follow the law." Shui Rui sneered and said, "Aren't you bragging about not making drafts? Can you still know such a friend on the mountain?" "Blessed immeasurable heavenly venerate." The Taoist said with one hand, "It's definitely not nonsense. The friends on the mountain of the poor Taoist have a few extremely powerful characters." Shui Rui asked, "For example?" The Taoist priest said, "If there is a chance in the future, I will introduce a friend named Zhong to meet Miss Shui." Shui Rui wondered, "What's your identity? Could it be a genealogical cultivator from a certain immortal mansion?" The Taoist smiled and said, "You will know when you meet. Doesn't matter what your identity is. Heroes don't care about their origins. Heroes don't ask where they come from." Seeing that this Taoist priest didn't seem to be joking, Shui Rui had a new question. "Are you really going to help that boy? What are you trying to do?" The Taoist priest said, "What people see with their eyes is heaven and earth." Shui Rui was confused. "What do you mean?" The Taoist priest had to explain. "A certain expert said that my generation of Taoist monks, if they can help one person in front of them, can help the whole world. On a trip abroad, I chatted a lot with Xing Juzhong and Li Shixing before, and when I chatted with people again I would inevitably lose a little patience." Shui Rui was silent for a moment. "Who said that?" The Taoist said with a smile. It's far away in the sky and close in front of you. Shui Rui's face darkened. The Taoist priest said, I believe that Miss Shui also sees some points. The young man's life is poor now just because of his rough life. His life has been plundered by many big and small calamities, so now outsiders give him extra, whether it is money or other. Teenagers may not be able to catch it, and it is very easy to turn misfortune instead of good fortune. It is not harmful to help the poor in the market, and it is a good and kind deed to accumulate een and good fortune. The giant lake is like a stream and the lake water flows back into the stream. If the latter has a thick life like a small stream, the waterbed is wide and can bear the load. It is the method of immortality on the mountain. What hurts is the root and yang of a person, which is the so-called unfortunate consumption of the old saying. This principle must be observed, and it is necessary to be cautious. Fortunately, the thickness of life, the increase or decrease of fortune, longevity, and longevity are not set in stone. In the eyes of the poor, he is a person who has a poor life but is blessed. In short, he has a late blessing. He does not owe the sky, he is not ashamed of the earth, he does not take people as rich, and he does not give in to people as precious. This is why the poor did yesterday. The root of the saying, God helps those who help themselves. Shui Rui nodded, but in fact she didn't see the fate of the young man at all. She was just a ghost, neither a warrior nor an official of the temple of the city god. How could she see these mysterious numerology? She hesitated. Then me and Zhang Ho? The Taoist said with a smile. Zhang Ho has the protection of his ancestors, and he himself is a person in a blue sarong. Miss Shui gave him a fairy family fate, and Zhang Ho can also accept it. She asked, is there really no sequelae? After all, she is a ghost, but the teenager is a human being. The Taoist priest said, isn't yin and yang only in geography and not in people's hearts? Miss Shui, don't get the order wrong, put the cart before the horse. Shui Rui breathed a sigh of relief. The first time she discovered this fake Taoist priest, it seemed that she still had some real skills. The Taoist priest asked, Miss Shui, since you are not afraid of the scorching sun and wind, why do you stay here and linger? For a small country like Yuxuangguo, it is more than enough for a Sevuing cultivator to find a dojo with abundant spiritual energy and establish a sect. Although Shui Rui is a ghost, since she is able to have a close relationship with the judge of the city's capital city and the chief officer of the Yin-Yang division, she thinks that she is not lacking in yin and virtue. Yes, being a mountain goddess is the best choice. Shui Rui said vaguely, at first I made a bet with someone to learn a poem written on red leaves from the ancients, and was picked up by someone inadvertently, and I made an oath with him in a temple. Year after year the treasure fan is idle, living up to the bright moon and breeze. Spring and autumn come, the chills are mournful, speechless and condensed. Geese pass by and the moon is like a hook. The Taoist priest hesitated for a moment, carefully mulling over his words, and asked, Miss Shui, are you proficient in sentence reading? Shui Rui smiled and said, it's all right. I'm relatively interested in exegesis. I have nothing to do and I have read a lot of works by former sages. Shui Rui would not be embarrassed to discuss exegesis with her. She considered herself an expert. This involved Zhang Ho, a young man next door. He treasured a copybook of ancestral inheritance, with a total of 36 characters and no signature, but was praised by Judge Hong as 36 Liju. This copybook is also the foundation of the young man's way. It's a pity that Zhang Hao's aptitude is average and his progress is slow. Now he can be regarded as a monk of the second realm. And these 36 words can be roughly divided into 2 sentences, and the content of the 2 sentences is quite obscure, which involves exegesis skills. She explained the deep meaning to Zhang Ho based on her own sentence, and then helped Zhang Ho embark on the path of Taoism according to a superior guidance method contained in the 36 characters of the copybook. The Taoist smiled and said, when I was young I once heard a friend, half an elder, talk about the relationship between words, sentences and meanings. He said that every word composed of every sentence has weight. I just lived there but I didn't feel deeply. Later I found out that when Xing originally authored the rectification of the name, and I saw it in it back then. Famous is a true metaphor and the name is used. It is tired to write and the name is beautiful. Usually all are well known. Seeing this I suddenly realized it. Shui Rui had a proud look on her face and pointed to the peachwood sword on the ground. Stop talking nonsense, you will know how to show off your knowledge. Hurry up, use the sword as a pen, write the content and I will help you break the sentence. At the moment Qin Pingon was a little depressed and he didn't know how to open his mouth for a while. The content of the copybook that was treasured by Shui Rui and the teenager was actually not complicated. Anyway, there were only 36 words, and there was indeed an ancient guide hidden in it. Law and Qin Pingon just glanced at it and looked at the meaning of Taoism, and found that there is some Taoism with one of the 3 mountains and the Confucian temple ritual system. Of course, Qin Pingon will not covet this Taoshu of the magic weapon. But the problem is that Shui Rui, a half-hearted exegesis expert, can't say that she is completely wrong, but there must be errors in making a sentence for Zhang Ho. In Taoism on the mountain, the difference of a word often leads to 1,000 miles off topic. Otherwise, why would there be one word on the mountain? Master, this kind of chi trainer? That is to say, the contents of the copybook in the Taoist sages are extremely pure and generous. If Zhang Ho followed Shui Rui's preaching, teaching and demystifying to practice, it is estimated that he would lead the way and lead to the devil. Although Zhang Hao's aptitude is average, he is not a genius of Taoism, and it will be extremely difficult to enter the cave in the future. However, under the preaching of Shui Rui, the young man has practiced this guidance technique since he was a child. Explain the problem. Qin Pingon thought about it, that's all. He was dismissed from the house as a person with ulterior motives, and he said straight to the point. Miss Shui, that Jing Sinong is naturally a great scholar of classics, but he is in the history of Confucianism in exegesis, many details need to be discussed. For example, some of his sentences have attracted a Confucian sage with the same surname of Jing to refute word by word. So if Miss Shui copied Jing Sinong's sentence reading, Law. Shui Rui's eyes were faint. Have you seen that copybook? Qin Pingon nodded and said, I've seen it. I also know that there is a guidance method hidden in the copybook. Shui Rui was silent. In the case of Mu Duo's repairing fire and banning the common kingdom, he held a candle in the temple in the palace, and gradually went east to Haishi to be in Lusha Shunan and Xingjiao to the 4 seas. As soon as Qin Pingon stretched out his hand, he controlled the peachwood sword in his hand, and began to write the 36 characters on the ground to help her break the sentence, and at the same time explained to her in detail why it was so. Zheng Sinong divided the first 18 characters into 3 sentences. Among them, fire ban is read separately and the meaning is incomprehensible. The frequent occurrence of fire ban in ritual and sage works is the proof of the linked text. If we follow Zheng Sinong's solution, the duties of the official of the ancient palace are too broad, so Zheng Sinong was so scolded that he was directly denounced by the other sage as no resignation, just no words for scholars. It is a very heavy criticism. As for the last 18 characters, there have been disputes within the Confucian temple for hundreds of years, but according to Wen Xing's view, the word Xing Sufuzi explained Ji and, which should be correct, come, and also the sun is quite seen. It describes the sun's deflection and the end is the same as the solution of to, and it goes straight. Therefore, a more reasonable sentence is the east is in the sea, the west is in the quicksand, the south is south, and the sound teaching ends in the 4 seas. Therefore the extended meaning is wherever the sun shines, its voice teaching is practiced. That's why Zhang Hao's Daoyin technique, one of the top of the head cave house, cut open the gate of heaven to lead the way of sunlight as the way of fire and sun refining. It seems to be pursuing the majestic weather of the sun hanging in the sky, and then passing through a straight line in order to guide the sun. Zhang Ho directly illuminates the sky at noon every day, and the exterior and interior are connected with the interior. In fact, the cave is wrong and the path of sunlight is also wrong. In this way, practice qi step by step. The right way, the reason is very simple. Just think about the house in the world. Unless it is the courtyard where the 4 waters return to the church, there is no mansion with a wide open roof. How to keep out the wind and rain? Shui Rui sometimes frowned, sometimes suddenly. The fake Taoist priests who spoke such opinions, whether it was Wu Di or Qin Jianxian, were just one of Qin Ping's avatars. Previously, Qin Pingon used the talisman method to distract himself by attaching himself to a talisman puppet, like a star falling all over Aquarius. For example, the fake Taoist priest in the capital of Yushuan Kingdom, in addition to setting up stalls, will also study the Taoist rituals secretly taught by the great heavenly master outside Longhu Mountain, and because of the relationship between this copybook, he left with fate and started to expound in-depth research. In Yuzhou there was a Qin Pingon, who, as a lay Buddhist of Xiang Buddha, went to a Luzong temple to study and maintain the precepts. The key to the Buddhist principles and purposes of the Vinaya school lies in the word precept, And the precepts are grouped into two categories: abstinence and action and maintenance. Upholding is the practice of all good things, and it is to cultivate all good doors. That's why Qin Pingon here only wrote that Buddhist phrase before. In the realm of Qingxing Kingdom, there is a qi practitioner from a foreign country who reads military books every day in the Xianxia Inn. Near Xingyang Mountain, there is a place called Kaiyushan Bamboo Branch School, where he serves as an outsider, and uses the method of arithmetic to study the roots of farmers and businesses. Shui Rui looked at the 36 characters on the ground, raised her head and asked, "Who are you?" Qin Pingon smiled and said, "Who is not a Taoist on the mountain in the world?" Shui Rui lowered her head again and looked at the 36 words that were rephrased. The more she thought about it, the more profound she felt. No surprises, this sentence is the correct answer. When Shui Rui raised her head, the middle-aged Taoist priest had already walked away with the peachwood sword, and she asked, "Let's set up a stall?" Qin Pingon turned his head and said with a smile, "Pindao is best at observing words and expressions, so he will take the initiative to pack up and get out of the way." Shui Rui shook her head. "You are not renting a house with me, whether you live in it or not, I won't count it." The middle-aged Taoist snorted and suddenly realized, yes, they are all residents, one new and one old. Shui Rui hesitated for a moment. Can Taoist Qin teach the most appropriate method of opening a house and refining fire? The Taoist priest shook his head. Zhang Ho only read the Book of Sages, and the poor Taoist is vulgar, but he can't teach him the superior magic of the fairy family. Shui Rui was a little anxious. "Why do you still hold grudges?" The Taoist priest smiled and said, "The money is clearly a man and the love and hatred are clearly distinguished. He is really a hero. He has no temper or character. How can he be a Taoist priest?" Shui Rui stretched out her hand. "I bought all the talismans that the Taoist priest and I sold before." The Taoist sighed, raised his sleeves quickly and walked towards her quickly. "Pindao has long thought that Mr. Zhang's roots are very strange, and with this talisman, it is like a divine help. This year's cold spring is especially obvious. At the end of February there was also a heavy snowfall. In Jingyang Mansion of Qingling Kingdom, there has been the custom of drinking early wine since ancient times. After the snow melted, even if they were frozen into quails, not only men but also women called friends to each other, and the aroma of meat and wine still wafted in the market. There is a sect of Xinjia with a long history in Jingyang Mansion, the Zhuji sect of Yushan Mountain. A middle-aged man wearing a cotton robe and a pair of suede boots was walking along a creek where the ice surface had just thawed, and the water was gurgling. He was hurriedly stepping on the muddy road. The old man with a face hurried forward in 3 steps. The old man said sternly, "Old, what is going on with you? The main lord is here and you haven't seen anyone yet. It's a big deal to ask me to come here to pick you up. Do you think it's young Master Xiaohou who invites you to drink?" The man said aggrieved, "Uncle Bai, I'm going out a quarter of an hour earlier." The old man who was called Uncle Bai said angrily, "You have an appointment to drink breakfast at the middle of the hour, so young Master Xiaohou has to be there on time. How can it be enough to arrive at the appointment a quarter of an hour earlier? Understand how to be a know-it-all." The man bowed his head and sighed and warmed his hands with a breath. "You know guests from outside and you know from outside. Uncle Bai, calm down, come back and invite you to drink a pot of turpentine wine." The old man glared and said, "This is not an example." The man nodded vigorously. "Guarantee I won't do it next time." The old man hesitated for a moment and said in his heart, "What kind of temper does young Master Xiaohou have? Even if you haven't experienced it yourself, you should have heard a little bit about it. It's neither serious nor serious. You screwed up this wine bureau and good things have turned into bad things. Don't you have to turn around and blame me then?" The man rubbed his hands and smiled and said, "If it's really because of such a trivial matter, I will be hated by young Master Xiaohou. No one will complain about Uncle Bai, and my conscience has not been eaten by dogs." The old man glanced at the scraps on the man's shoulder. Obviously, the boy went down to the pit to find veins and quarry stones. The old man remained calm, but his eyes were a little soft, but he snorted coldly, "You are a barefooted person who is not afraid of wearing shoes. If you know guests from outside the door, you don't have to be afraid of eating Xiaohu's son's hanging. It's a big deal, slap the buttocks and leave. Don't you have a place for you to stay here? If I'm implicated by you, how can I go? I can carry a hole as the director Yushan running away. Don't let me run into you, kid, or I will scold you every time I see you." The so-called cold-hearted and warm-hearted, but that's it. There are always some old people who like to deliberately say things that are unpleasant but reasonable, as if they are afraid that others will read him well. The man seemed to be a jerk and rubbed the old man's shoulders with a hippie smile. Uncle Bai is an old fairy, isn't Yu Shan still walking as fast as usual? The old man shook his shoulders, shook off the hands of the man in the cotton robe and taught a lesson. Anyway, you are our acquaintance, save money, buy a decent robe, look at you poor and sour. The man smiled and said, it's not a thing to wear a robe. Besides, the real rich people on the mountain all look like me. Wearing a robe, it's not very atmospheric. How much money do you have? Dare to talk about real rich people, have you seen them? Uncle Bai, when I'm rich I will wear 7 or 8 robes on my body and show off. Do you wear robes or sell robes? It's okay to sell both while wearing it. Uncle Bai, isn't my business doing well? Uncle Bai said, the rebuilding of the sect cannot be rushed. There is a long way to go. You still have to read the Xianxia newspaper and find the elders and brothers of the sect first. Like a genealogy, you don't have the same name. Whether it's restoring the country or establishing a new imperial court, how would you be willing to hand over the ruins of a huge immortal mansion to a 4-level chi practitioner like you, even if that new Jun Dadu, if you are willing to return the original site, will you be able to keep the family business? Because the entire south of Beipingzu was occupied by the wild monster clan, countless mountain gates and monks moved north one after another, and entered the northern area after crossing Dadu. Nowadays, there are still many southern immortal mansions and mountain sects in the newspapers of various landscape houses in Beipingzu. The old department or recruiting troops, trying to replenish the manpower and restore the old glory. Otherwise, the Ancestors' Hall has been relocated and it is too far away from the original place of the sect. It is necessary to report to those who have been separated for many years. Which country where? Qin Jiu nodded and said, it's really not good. If I really want to find the elders of the division, I will go to the head of Gua, ask her to help me rebuild the mountain gate, and then sign a paper mountain alliance with the head of Gua. In this way the Zhuji faction has down the mountain. Bai Bo laughed angrily, it's fantastic. The earliest patriarchal hall of the Zhuji school was established on the top of Tsayu Mountain. Today there is still a patriarchal hall ruins, but it was relocated to another place in the hands of the second-generation mountain master. Always feel that the omen is not good. Just because of the cornucopia of Jade Mountain, there is a quarry called Yeshi. The jade produced here can be used to peck inkstones or be used to carve into various precious jades and jade mountains. Reiki veins are similar to chalcedony waterway, although the content is not high, but it is extremely rare on the mountain, especially those large jade placed in the courtyard, used as a feng shui stone, almost the ones from Qingling Kingdom. Standard for aristocratic families. However, the bamboo branch sect never dared to hide such boulders that could not be found. They would pay tribute to Xingyang Mountain, and then resell them to dignitaries at a high price from a certain peak. The founder of the Bamboo Branch School, who is good at geography and has a unique eye, signed a contract with the imperial court in the early years, and used a very low price to purchase the entire Dao Jade Mountain and the surrounding veins. When the monks of the Zhuji school dig deeper, it is like sitting on a treasure mountain. After realizing it, Xingyang Mountain has never thought that there is such a valuable jade vein hidden under his nose. It is just Zhuji. The faction had already signed a land deed with the court at that time, and it was too late to regret it. But Xingyang Mountain did not make such a ruthless act of slaughtering it. Covenant, the latter actually became the vassal sect of Xingyang Mountain. The current head, Guo Huifeng, is a female cultivator of golden elixir. Only because of the opening of the Bamboo Branch School, the ancestor of Shan was a contract with the previous dynasty. So when the founding emperor of Qingling Kingdom sat on the dragon chair 200 years ago, the Zhuji faction and the Jade Mountain encountered a crisis that was about to come. It is said that she is sitting in a large formation on the Mount Jade Mountain, and it is clear that if the Sword Immortal of Xingyang Mountain dares to occupy the ancestral property of the Mount Jade Mountain, she will come to burn all the jade stones Xingyang Mountain, Qingling Kingdom and Zhuji sect. A or vain. The resolute character of this head female cultivator is evident. Qin Pingan smiled, finally seeing the prodigy brother who worked hard and made a lot of money in Shuangfeng. When he was a mountain master, when he was in Luopao Mountain, he seldom took the initiative to talk about other mountains, let alone a certain monk. But this man is definitely an exception. Not to mention millet grains, even Wanshu and Shi Ro, the shopkeeper of Qilong Lane, have heard of this. This prodigy brother must never have imagined that he has such a high prestige in Luopao Mountain. According to the old cook at the wine table, if you don't talk about Brother Xiaohu's feet, drinking is tasteless. This well-known wizard brother, named Xiahou Zhan as the proud disciple of the ancestor Yan of Shilongfeng, has been in charge of the espionage affairs of Xinjiang Mountain, and has collected intelligence for 20 years. One of the most important intelligence lines is to stare at Qin Pingan and Lu Xianyang in Huaihuang County Old Longzhou. For this reason, Brother Xiaohu's few capable subordinates can be called confidants, and they also cooperate with embroidery. Ye Chong Danjiang Shuifu, whether deep or shallow, has climbed up the relationship, and has smashed a lot of immortal money into the latter's pockets to many Shuifu subordinates who claim to have hands and eyes, ears and eyes. But this Xiahou brother from beginning to end has never used the means of inferiority. Of course, he really did not dare to act rashly. After all, the backing of the mountain is Beiwepiun Mountain. The owner of the mountain has always been the accountant supported by Shanjun Weibo. He is responsible for taking a lot of the gray income of the Shanjun mansion through a nujiadu shared by the two mountains, laundering it into clean immortal money, and secretly flowing into the Shanjun mansion treasury every year. As for that Lu Xianyang, he left his hometown early and went to study for many years with the Confucian Qin clan in Bozhuozu. As a result, when he returned home, he was lucky and changed his body. He became the direct disciple of Wan Qiong Longquan sword sect, and Wan Qiong was the Dali dynasty. The chief offering. The backers on both sides were either Beiwe Shanjun or Chief Delirwan, so Brother Xiahou would dare to mess around. By the time the famous Zongmen celebration was over, Brother Xiahou would have completed his merits and virtues. Qin Jiu suddenly said, "Uncle Bai, I beg you, if that Xiahou Jianxian asks, can you say that I paid the fat man for the swollen face for this drink?" Uncle Bai said, 3 pots of turpentine wine. Originally, Yushan had to check with Xiahou Zhan on time, so this meal was a public expense of the Zhuji faction, and Bai Ni didn't have to pay for it himself. 2 pots. Make a deal. In the boundary of Tsayu Mountain on a bank called Sanhuatan, there is a restaurant of bamboo branch that is not open to the public for business. There is now a wine bureau. The person in charge today is the current mining officer in charge of cutting the Yushan quarry. There was only one guest, a noble person from Xinjiang Mountain, a sword immortal who was not too young but also definitely not old, Xiahou Zhan. The escorts were a man and a woman who knew old customers from outside the door, and a female cultivator Liang Yuping with the Taoist name Banana Leaf. The hairpin of the female nun is a small and exquisite plantain fan. As for the man, there is nothing to say. He is just an outsider. He looks ordinary, his realm is not high and his status is average. She got the news out of nowhere and volunteered to participate in the wine party, but Uncle Bai couldn't stop her. Liang Yuping is an apprentice of the Jizu Mountain lineage, and it is no surprise that she is the next peak leader. And Jizu Mountain is also the incense Dao vein passed down by the previous head. In fact, the bamboo branch faction was divided into 2 factions. The cultivators of the Yushan lineage did not want to be too attached to Xinjiang Mountain, while the Jizu Mountain lineage was determined to seek refuge in the Xinjiang Mountain. It used to be with Qiuling. The mountains are showing affection everywhere, but now they have turned around and hugged Man Yefeng's thigh. There are 3 types of vassal and subordination relationships on the mountain. The first type is expressly determined that the 2 parties belong to the relationship between the upper and lower mountains. The genealogy of the monks who go down the mountain must be included in the supplementary book of genealogy of the ancestors of the mountain. The status is naturally inferior, and it is extremely difficult to escape the control of the mountain. The second type, the vassal sect, is the kind of subordinate immortal mansion that needs to pay tribute money and materials to the sect master sect on time. The relationship between the Zhuji sect and Xinjiang Mountain is this kind. The third type is allies on the mountain, but the 2 are very different in strength and the weaker party does not need to pay tribute, such as Luopao Mountain and Zhuchai Island on the back of Clawfish. The restaurant is 2 stories high, and there is a large room on the 2nd floor, which has always been specially used to entertain the distinguished guests of Xinjiang Mountain. Uncle Bai walked up the stairs with a man named Jujio. In the corridor, Liang Yuping was already standing at the door, slender, with a string of priceless Qiuzhu bracelets on his wrist. The nun looked at about 30 years old, with a slender body and a mole on the corner of her mouth. The robe she wore today was obviously carefully selected. The thin parts were thinner and the fat parts were chubby. Liang Yuping saw the Bai Ni who held the real power of mining and complained softly, "Bai Bo, how can I make young Master Xiaohe wait for a long time? When you come, young Master Xiaohe will tell me not to worry." The female nun's voice was not too loud, not too small. Uncle Bai from the cave house in the corridor could hear it very clearly, and Xiahou Jianxian from the dragon gate in the room must have heard it more clearly. Uncle Bai smiled softly, "That's why Yuping is in charge of hospitality." The nun returned with anger and joy. After entering the room, Uncle Bai bowed his hands in apology, and young Master Xiaohe put down the bamboo hat in his hand, stood up, and said with a smile that he didn't have to be so outspoken. Uncle Bai asked, "Xiahou Jianxian, let someone serve you?" Xiahou Zhan nodded and smiled. "Naturally, it's up to the guest to follow the master. Anyway, I have nothing to do now, so what if I wait for a while, not to mention that fellow Daoist banana leaf brews good tea. The Mingqian tea I ordered is still delicious." Uncle Bai looked at the relieved acquaintance from the corner of his eyes. What a fool. The implication of this, I started to ask the teacher for guilt, but I couldn't hear it. Bai Bo repeatedly clasped his fists to beg for mercy. "I'm not old-fashioned, I'll drink 3 glasses of fine wine later. The elders are respected. Uncle Bai will treat me like an outsider if he talks like that again." "Don't dare." The female cultivator began to smooth things out. "Master Xiaohe, today there is a main dish, drunk shrimp, but our restaurant has spent a lot of effort to buy 18 silver and we made up a plate. Adili, superintendent of transportation, has a passion for incense, so I finally bought it." It's like she bought it out of her own pocket. Uncle Bai didn't care that she was robbed of the credit. Xiahou Zhan said with a smile, "Yinzi, also known as Helong, I used to be in the light of Master Long and I have eaten it several times." The female nun suddenly looked extremely embarrassed. "Bai Ni is also a big head, but you Liang Yuping think it is rare. You said that you are showing off something with a Shulongfeng sword Immortal. Shulongfeng not only cultivates kendo, the direct disciples often also practice water law, and the water in one continent clearly offers game, certainly not lack of knowledge. It turns out that there is an underground river in Beipingzu which is known as the Dragon Road. It is always a ferry from Xianxia. There is a unique kind of strange river shrimp in the water. In the north of the river, such as Shushui Kingdom, it is called River Dragon, and in the south, it is nicknamed Silver. A river dragon with a length of 1 finger is a first-class rare and precious river. If a river dragon has lived for 100 years, its body shape is long to 2 fingers. Nowadays, a river dragon with a finger length can be sold for a snow money, and there is no market for it. If you don't have any friendship with the Dali governor's transport office or the Ho family of the old Longqing, you can't buy it at all. Xiahou Zhan asked casually, "Which transport officer is that?" Uncle Bai said, "It's an officer surnamed Huang." "How many officials?" "It seems to be from the 5th grade. Xiahou Zhan nodded. "That's one of the assistants under the command of Governor Yu Yun. In the past, this kind of mountain delicacies were all made by a senior brother who was in charge of money in Shulongfeng, who ordered it directly with the governor of the Dali Chaoyun office. But the surnamed Yu was a big one. It is said that he went to Ziguaguan with the Dali. The children of the clan are very friendly, so they got such a fat shortage." Qin Pingon smiled. "Speaking of which, Yu Shanfang, the transport supervisor in charge of this Longdao route, is now at the Dali superintendent's office. Because of Guan Yiran's relationship, the 2 parties are still old acquaintances and old wine friends. The wine is even worse. Say he is fake drunk, he gets under the table when he drinks too much, and if he is really drunk he touches the boots of the female cultivator Chi when he gets under the table. Back then, the Dali court set up a new yamen to supervise and take charge of the ferry route of Yizhou, Xianxia ferry, and the transportation of goods on the mountain. The family got 3 chairs. Originally, Guan Yiran wanted to sit on the lowest chair relative to the official position. He also persuaded Yu Shanfang to go with him to the newly opened Chao Yunya office. The new friends joined forces, the latter made money cleanly and the former was promoted smoothly. As a result, Yu Shanfang was reluctant to take office, and as a result Guan Yiran, who talked like a fart, turned his head and ran to become a supervisor of the Dadu. Now, as one of the transport supervisors, Yu Shanfang's most important responsibility is the long north-south long road of Aquarius Island. As for the Ho family of the old Dragon City who had been involved in the Dragon Road business earlier, they once occupied half of the route. After the intervention of the Dali court, the Ho family could only obediently retreat behind the scenes and eat some leftovers. The current yamen of the General Administration of Supervision and Transportation of Dali is located on the bank of Jidu, not in Luojing, the capital of Dali, and is a close neighbor to the Haoshuafu of Changchun. The chief officer, known as Chao Shui, has been promoted from the 3rd rank to the 2nd rank, and the 2 auxiliary officers have also been promoted to the 3rd rank. As a rule, the governor of Chaoyun is not subject to the restraint of the ministry and is directly responsible to the emperor and can be discounted. In the past 20 years, Yushanfang, which has a prosperous official business, has a good start. It was the first veteran who entered the yamen at the beginning of its establishment. In addition, the earliest 30 mountain routes were reduced to 17 because the Dali dynasty returned to the north of Dadu, and the Song dynasty abolished some of the transportation supervisors and related assistants. Mostly Gao Xing or Ping Tiao transferred to the local area. In the prefecture and county, among the remaining transport supervisors, there is Yu Shanfeng. From the 4th rank, the key is the long road under his full jurisdiction. Since the northern end is located in the Shushui Kingdom in the middle of a continent, it is the only route extending to the main waterway in the southern boundary of Aquarius Island. So even the fool can see that the authority in the hands of Yu Diyun is definitely not limited to the matter of taking the Dragon Road to supervise the transport. The countries and immortals along the river will return the entire treasure at the Dali court. After the mountains and rivers in the south of Pingzhou, the Dali court still regards itself as a vassal state. It is estimated that some of the credit must be attributed to Yu Shanfeng. As for the extent of the credit, it only needs to see Yu Shanfeng transferred to another place in the future. The height is low, it will be clear. Xiahou seemed to finally see the out-of-door acquaintance who had been mute in the same place and smiled. "Uncle Bai, who is this?" Uncle Bai said in a deep voice, "Old. What are you still doing?" Qin Jiu immediately clasped his fists and said, "Zhuji sect's outer sect knows that the guest is old and has seen Xiahou Jianxian." Xiahou was silent for a moment, then nodded with a smile. "It's a pleasure to meet you, I have long admired your name." The old movements were stiff, and he kept holding the fist-clasping gesture for a long time before saying, "It's an honor to finally meet Xiahou Jianxian." Xiahou smiled and said nothing. Liang Yuping twitched the corners of his mouth. "It's really dog meat can't get on the table." What did Bai and I think that he was willing to help this kind of rubbish? Xiahou could see it, and it was strange. A vassal sect of Xingyang Mountain, the outer sect knows guests only, and is responsible for ushering and sending them. It does not involve the confidential matters of the Zhuji sect, and even has no access to the account books of the outer sect and Kaiyushan. Moreover, as a know-how, every expenditure needs to be recorded in detail, reported to the accountant, and it is possible to give out money. If you want to become an acquaintance of the 8 classics Xinfu sect, you must have a clean background and be well documented. After all, the customs issued by the Dali dynasty are not so easy to fake, not to mention the cost of cheating is too high. Once found, you need to face that's right, it's not the Qingling Kingdom's court, but the cultivator directly under the single line of the Dali punishment department. In front of him, Xiahou Jianxian, who is not angry and arrogant, is the genius brother who is in charge of the espionage of Xingyang Mountain. Before they were seated, Xiahou and Uncle Bai humbly declined, and Liang Yuping smiled and persuaded them to sit down. Uncle Bai really drank 3 glasses of fine wine first, and then brought old Jiu together to toast Xiahou young master. When Ji Jiu was stupid, he sat back to his seat after drinking and there was no movement. Uncle Bai gave this out-of-door acquaintance a wink. After realizing it, he got up to toast alone. Xiahou sat in his seat, took a sip of wine, reached out and pressed it twice, signaling the man opposite to sit down to eat. When Xiahou was drinking, he looked depressed, obviously in a bad mood. On the peaks of Xingyang Mountain, Jianxiu, who was the same generation as Xiahou, or who was about the same level, began to speak rude words. "It's all my fault that I didn't choose a good name, Zon, 3 jade and 2 stones. Since the jade is mixed with each other, it is not pure jade." When the plate of silver was brought to the table, Xiahou was not in a good mood, so he just put a chopstick of drunken shrimp for Liang Yuping next to him. The nun was flattered and smiled. Qin Jiu wanted to pick up a pair of chopsticks to taste the drunken shrimp, but he was immediately stunned by Uncle Bai, so he had to transfer the chopsticks angrily and caught a wild brook miscellaneous fish. After the questioning sword, a series of earth-shaking changes occurred in the peaks of Xingyang Mountain. Xiaoyunkai, the most senior patriarch of the Full Moon Peak as a Jade Pure Realm Sword Immortal, not to mention the Palm Law, also occupies two peaks that have been idle for many years. Tao Yanba's Qiling Mountain has been closed. Yuan Ying Lao Jianxian voluntarily resigned from all sect positions, and the sect master Zhu Huang ordered Tao Yanba to think about it behind closed doors. The identity of Yan Chu of Shilongfeng has changed from the patriarch of the law to the top of the treasure house of Xingyang Mountain. Leng Qi, the master of Qiongji Peak, declared that he was in seclusion, and his disciple Lu Yu took over the affairs. The master of Yujiao Peak, Yu Zi, this young Jindan sword immortal, although he made a big mistake in the accident, he did not become decadent. I only say that Xingyang Mountain has erected a monument on the border. After several twists and turns, now there is even a group of young swordsmen, nearly 10 people who are cultivating here. They come from Wufeng. It is said that they formed a small hill in private. A total of more than 20 people, all of them are relatively young geniuses in Zhufeng, among them Eugene, who is one of the backbones. Sect Master Zhu Huang and Zhu Shitang didn't say anything about it. Zhu Huang just asked those young people to remind the young people in private that they were not allowed to damage the steel. In fact, Shilongfeng was not damaged much in this accident, and it was even the only mountain that benefited from misfortune, and the status of the sect was slightly elevated. Only Xiahou Zan, the proud disciple of the Shilongfeng Yan Lao Jianxian, was the most frustrated. Liang Yuping started arranging a few vassals of Xingyang Mountain, and said a few words about her own sect, especially how those junior sisters admired Shilongfeng in the Jizu mountain lineage where she was located. Xiahou Zan nodded and smiled and said, "Your bamboo branch faction has always been friends with our Xingyang Mountain from generation to generation. Whenever Master mentions Jizu Mountain, he is always full of praise and kind words." Liang Yuping glanced at Uncle Bai sideways. The Yushan Bamboo Branch School is one of the many vassal schools in Xingyang Mountain. In fact, when it was at its peak, there were as many as a dozen such downhill or vassal schools in Xingyang Mountain. But today is different from the past, half of which are nominally, although the vassal sects have not officially separated from their vassal status for the time being. They used to rush to the Zushan Dianmao in Xingyang Mountain on time every time they gathered together by a talisman boat or a private ferry. Send a subordinate to show his face and come here to do business. And Xiahou Zan, the direct disciple of the Water Dragon Peak ancestor, the dignified Dragon Gate sword cultivator, is now only in charge of the collection of the 3 vassal sects north of Xingyang Mountain. Among them there is the Bamboo Branch School. In fact, where does he need to urge him? And it is not the enclave hilltop that is far away from the emperor. This Jade Mountain is only a few steps away from Xingyang Mountain. Therefore, people with discerning eyes know that Xiahou Zan is regarded as an abandoned child by Xingyang Mountain and Shilongfeng, which means that he has been demoted again and again, and he has been completely on the bench. Speaking from conscience, Xiahou Zan, who is a Longmen realm cultivator, did not slack off or take it lightly when it came to collecting espionage. To be honest, I don't have any personal pockets and I don't have any greed for money. He just wanted to take credit. Fortunately, there is a place in the Zushan Zushi Hall which became a sect. Even if the realm is not enough and the etiquette is not suitable, what about the next sect in the future? Therefore, Xiahou Zan, who used to almost never drink alcohol, now drinks booze whenever he gets a chance. Otherwise, as by Ni, would you have to move him, Xiahou Zan? Could it be that this silver, that is less than half the length of chopsticks, is just based on the Dragon Road? Guo Huifeng, the head of the Bamboo Branch sect, personally invited him to drink. But the other people don't have back pain when they stand and talk. Now there are a lot of gossips in Xingyang Mountain. Although the master and his old man are on the side of the angry sect master, they manage to keep their status as the direct descendant of Shuilong Peak, but they can only make him highly valued. The proud disciple went out to avoid the limelight. How could outsiders know about his difficulties in Xiahou Zan? To collect espionage, he had to bypass the Dali court and the Longzhou government. He also needed to avoid the Beiyue Mountain, which was as good as Luopao Mountain in wearing a pair of trousers. As for Lu Xianying, how would he investigate? They all went to Nambua Suozhou Chunruchen to study abroad, and that Longquan sword sect, the entire sect, there are only a few people. How to let him infiltrate, how to secretly arrange people. Otherwise, even if it is replaced by Xingao sect, Yunlin Jiang sect, such a behemoth, it will not be so difficult. Yuzhua Peak of Yujiao and Liuyu of Qiongji Peak had both practiced swordsmanship in Longquan Jianzong, but Xiahou Zan could never ask any useful information, especially that Yuqin, before and after he became the peak master, used to be honored as Xiahou Jianxian, and later called Daoist casually, it was like two different people. Therefore Xiahou can only be a mute and eat Huanglian. Listen to the master, dormant for a few years. Don't show your face and look back for opportunities. At the Huangshan sword sect of Zhongyue Dijia he will be assigned a position of real power. Xiahou face was gloomy, and he lowered his head and took a sip of suffocating wine. Hidden officer? Is it great? If you really want to meet him face to face just like Lao Tzu's temper, he has to ask the sword with his surname Chen. What if you lose? You can't lose your backbone. I believe that the other party will never kill him alive. The old-fashioned out-of-the-way acquaintance finally had the courage to say a fair word. The big sect is like an officialdom, and it will inevitably be contaminated with some bad habits. It is always those who really do things seriously who suffer the most. Well, if you don't do it well, gossip will come flooding your head, openly and secretly, no matter where you can stop it, such as Xiahou Jiangxian's situation. Just flip through the history books. Why is there less? I have to make a toast with Xiahou Jianxian here. Uncle Bai was full of surprise, looking at the old man holding a toast in both hands. This kid finally got enlightened? Xiahou glanced sideways and nodded. Never thought that he could speak. It is no wonder that he can be an outsider on the side of Tsayu Mountain. Xiahou asked, "What's your name?" The man hurriedly registered his account again. Old Dongchen, old things are old. It is estimated that his voice was low before, or Xiahou didn't remember it. The nobles have forgotten things. Xiahou frowned slightly, and it was annoying to hear that his surname was Chen. Qinjiu seemed to be someone who was fairly good at observing words and expressions, so he immediately began to show his loyalty. I have never had a good impression of that person surnamed Chen in Luopa Mountain, since I heard that there is such a number one person. Full of old fists to him. Xiahou face lost a bit of disgust, and the numbness was a little numb, but after all it was a pleasant word. He narrowed his eyes and asked, "Qinjika, you and the mountain master have no relationship and no grievance. Why are you so disgusted with this person?" Xiahou grabbed a river dragon and chewed it slowly. "Don't rush to answer, just think about it. You can drink alcohol indiscriminately, but you can't talk nonsense." The atmosphere of the wine table suddenly became solemn. Liang Yuping gloated a little. Uncle Bai began to worry and was worried. "You are an out-of-the-way acquaintance, so how can you be flattering like this? Gallbladder? The old covenant is not because of the courage of the wine," and without stage fright he said, "I have read a travel journal of landscapes, and it is the one that wrote about it. Dude, the encounters are endless, unsightly. He is full of benevolence, righteousness, and morality. He seems to be a chivalrous person who slays demons and slays demons all the way. In fact, he treats others leniently and leniently at a critical moment. He who refuses to suffer any loss is just a sanctimonious hypocrite. Beauty, money, luck, prestige, it was all cheap for him. Yen ghosts, fox charms, talisman beauties, cuddling red and green, Ying and Yen are never lacking. Anyway, whenever something happens, there are beauties who will save them and tide over the difficulties. How can there be a little bit of such a rich and powdery journey through the rivers and lakes? Dangerous at all, just leave me alone." Stale drank another glass of wine and snorted again. A person who only likes to reason all the time and a person who never likes to reason, there is only one thing in common, that is good luck. Nothing really matters. Bai Bo was speechless for a moment. Are you old-fashioned and dislike that young hidden official, or are you just envious of his constant encounters? Xiahou has a lot of information. He is a superficial person, but he speaks and does things decently. There are only two kinds of foreigners who pay out of their own pockets to pay money. One is that there is so much money in their pocket that they have nowhere to spend it, and the other is willing to spend a small amount of money today to earn a lot of money tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. As for a cheap practitioner from a foreign country who has been exiled to the Zhuji sect, how could he have such a rich family background? No surprise, just thinking about climbing up a relationship with the Zhuji sect, such as Jindan Guohuifeng, and returning home in good clothes in the coming year. Xiahou self-confessed vision of seeing people is still very accurate. The other party's humbleness to try not to let flattery appear too blatantly comes out of his bones, and he can't pretend. Knowing that this drink was paid for by the old, Xiahou rarely took the initiative to toast. After putting down the wine glass, Xiahou asked with a smile, "Qinjika, I heard that you are from Huanghuachuan in the south. You are not a small sect, and it is a stable third-rate immortal mansion in Treasure Vase. After all these years there has never been a pillar to prop up the old portal again, but I really care, compared with the Zhuji faction, your Huanghuachuan is only large in scale, and its background is only deep and not shallow. Do you feel shabby? By the way, I heard that there are several scenic spots in Huanghuachuan. Among them, Xiantong Mountain and Panji Mountain are facing each other. They are not high. They are all plum trees. When the flowers bloom, they are as white as snow. There is a Yuanyuan temple, and it is said that there is a long scroll in the temple. What is it called? Liang Yuping's face changed slightly. In the previous conversation, Xiahou seemed to have never even heard of this person's name, but he knew that this person was from Huanghuachuan in the south, and he was even more familiar with the customs there. Qinjiu was stunned for a while and seemed to say cautiously, I just heard Master occasionally mention that at the foot of the Xiantong Mountain in the Yuanyuan Lecture Temple, there is indeed a collection of 10,000 plum blossoms outside a futon, but it is generally not easy to take out. For outsiders to see, the master still has a good relationship with the abbot, and I only saw it once. Afterwards, the master and a few of us leaked, saying that this long scroll was not well kept, but unfortunately there are many black spots on it, and many of the poems and texts are unrecognizable. Qing. As for the vicinity of Panchi Mountain, the plum blossoms in the past really bloomed like a large article, but in the early years the local people in the local villages cut down a lot of plum trees because the planting of plums was so thin that the orchids could not be sold as potted plants. The so-called plum blossoms like snow is a bit unreal, and literati and pranksters like to go to other places to appreciate plums. Blooming flowers is like a large piece of article. It sounds a bit more remote than E by Rushua. Qinjika, you have a good conversation. Xiahou nodded, stretched out his chopsticks to pick up the drunken shrimp, and turned his head to ask, Uncle Bai, what is the monthly salary of the Bamboo Branch School's outer sect guest now? Quickly reported a number, 6 snows to spend. There will be dividends at the end of the year, but it depends on the market. The pair of chopsticks in Xiahou hand paused for a moment, nodded and said only 3 words, which is not too small. Then nothing was said. Uncle Bai had already understood it, not too much but not too much. Gotta give the stale a raise. This wine stale really didn't please in vain. At the foot of the Yushan Mountain, the Yeshi River merges into a large river. In the wide river, the official ships of the Qingling Kingdom are chaotic. Many precious utensils carefully crafted by craftsmen on the mountain of Zizipai flowed into the home of a country's honorable generals and ministers through this river. Apricot trees are planted on both sides of the strait, and the trees are full of apricot flowers, and the wind blows like snow. Wind and rain, apricot flowers and snow, the north and south waters beat the sky. At night, a nun stood under the apricot tree. I don't know why when the flowers are falling they are all frowning. Bai and I came here alone and said, Sect Master Xiahou seems to be rambunctious, but in fact he is extremely cautious, and there is no useful sentence at all on the wine table. Guo Huifeng nodded and said, If you can't control your mouth, how can you manage the information on Xingyang Mountain? Bai and I said softly, the 200-year lease term signed by the Qingling Kingdom's court is about to expire. This Xiahou, who is in charge of debt collection affairs with our sects at this time, can come here regularly. Wandering around the Jade Mountain, could it be the meaning of Xingyang Mountain Patriarch Hall or Water Dragon Peak? Guo Huifeng sighed quietly, even if there is no secret advice from Sect Master Zhu or Yan Jianxian, I am afraid that Xiahou himself has the idea of making up for the fault. It was in her hands last time. Regarding the Tsayu Mountain, the Zhuji faction and King Lingguo renewed a 200-year lease contract. This time, the Zhuji faction may find it difficult to keep the ancestral family business of this Jade Mountain. Bai and I said, in the contract it is written clearly in black and white, and our Zhuji faction can give priority to renewing the contract, and even if there are other immortals who want to buy the Jade Mountain, the Zhuji faction can also bid with them, and the one with the higher price wins. Guo Huifeng smiled bitterly and said, I'm afraid that the tree wants to be quiet and the wind won't stop. Bai and I didn't know the twists and turns in it. On the side of Shishizu he deliberately said some light words. Now that the deadline is up, the Zhuji faction has no legitimate reason to occupy the Jade Mountain. If King Lingguo wants to resell it to another home such as Xingyang Mountain, it will be difficult for the Zhuji faction to compete with the Xingyang Mountain. Even if Xingyang Mountain is willing to bid, the Zhuji faction dares to bid? It's no wonder that the Qingling Kingdom's court came to an imperial consecration not long ago. Those who hide their heads and hide their tails did not dare to let Xingyang Mountain know where they were. They just found Guo Huifeng in private and said some words around the corner, basically implying that Guo Huifeng, our Emperor Your Majesty's side, is actually very willing to renew the contract with the Zhuji faction, and the price is easy to negotiate. Apparently he was worried that the bamboo branch pie would not even be able to offer a price, so it was picked up by Xinjiang Mountain at a very low price. Therefore, for the Qingling Kingdom and the Bamboo Branch School, the ownership of a jade mountain in the next few hundred years is an extremely delicate and complicated situation. It is only said that the Emperor of Qingling Kingdom did not dare to provoke Xinjiang Mountain, nor did he want to give away a jade mountain for nothing. They wanted Zizipai and Guo Huifeng to bid as much as possible, but they didn't want to annoy Xianxia. As for Guo Huifeng, if he made up his mind not to compete for Yushan, then he would simply not make a bid. Of course, Xianxia would be happy to see it succeed, but he would have a bad relationship with the Qingling Kingdom court. Either she didn't care about the faces on both sides of Xinjiang Mountain and Qingling country, she directly asked Bai Ni to replace his master, who was the sect god of wealth, and bid all the way to 30 grain rain money. No matter what Xinjiang Mountain offered, it would be successful. If it doesn't work, it won't work. But once the largest source of wealth is given away, the Zhuji faction is it really going to become the descent of Xinjiang Mountain step by step? Guo Huifeng would never be reconciled to this. If it wasn't for the geographical location of her sect, Guo Huifeng didn't want to have anything to do with Xinjiang Mountain at all. This was the case before she took over as the head of the sect. She had either seen or heard too much about Xinjiang with her own eyes. The unseen act of the mountain. Bai Ni hesitated for a few times, but still summoned up his courage to suggest, "Sect Master, if you really want to keep your ancestral property and you won't be hated by Xinjiang Mountain, can we have a relationship with the mountain to the north, that young Yin official?" In the end, the old man probably thought it was absurd, so he couldn't go on. Guo Huifeng couldn't help laughing, but she couldn't help laughing. She was obviously amused by the whimsical idea of Uncle Bai. "Uncle Bai, who do you think I am? A monk in the upper 5 realms, or Li? A native of Zhou Cultivator? Do you think that if I go there I can meet that person? Take 10,000 steps back and say, without closing the door, can we negotiate with that person after meeting with that person? Uncle Bai, do you think they are the ones who founded the Shantang?" Because of his appearance showing old age, even Guo Huifeng, whose realm and age are far higher than this by Ni, will shout Bai Bo with humor. From this, it can be seen that the style of the Zhuji school is not so strict and everything is only the cultivator's realm. Right. Bai Ni nodded, remembering what the acquaintance said at the wine table earlier. Besides, according to the widely circulated landscape travel notes in the early years, when Shan Zhuchen was young, he was a lover who liked to mess around with flowers. If this is the case, if one is not careful, wouldn't the sect master throw himself into the trap? But don't beat the dog with meat buns. The content of the book of travel notes, I would rather believe it or not. Put yourself in the shoes. They are all men, people are not romantic, they are young, and there are few confidants. Guo Huifeng was full of doubts and asked curiously, "What landscape travel notes? The content is related to that Chiningguan? Can this kind of book be printed and sold?" Bai Ni blushed. "It's nothing, it's just a miscellaneous book made up by someone who doesn't know who it is." In the river, on an official boat, 2 old sword immortals who were from the same family, but differed by 1 generation, gathered here in secret. Hanging the curtain is a layer of landscape prohibition to prevent the partition wall from having ears. There are 2 peak masters of Xinjiang Mountain, Xianxia of Full Moon Peak and Yanchu of Shuilong Peak. "Yanchu, haven't you spoken to Xia Hozan? Ancestor Xia, my apprentice, has enough intelligence and a strict mouth, but his biggest weakness is that he is not cruel enough to do things. It is not without reason that he has not been able to enter the Golden Core yet. He will definitely help with such secrets. If he's not busy, he won't let him get involved so as not to cause trouble. After all, Emperor Zhu is not stupid, it would be bad if he noticed the clues." Xia Yuntue squinted and looked at the jade mountain in the distance. It's just a jade vein that has been mined for hundreds of years. The geographer of Qingling Kingdom's Qin Tianjian estimated the value of the reserves not long ago, and it's worth more than 100 grain rain coins. And it is time-consuming and labor-intensive. In fact, it is nothing to give it to Guo Huifeng. Anyway, we have a large share of the account every year in Xinjiang Mountain, which is regarded as the salary of hiring people to dig the mountain. The key is that this Guo Huifeng is too stubborn and does not know in general. I always want to draw a clear line with Xinjiang Mountain. I just used her to kill the chicken and show the monkeys. Through this opportunity Guohuifeng will be ruined, and then the Jizu Mountain will be supported. The Zhuxi faction must sign with our Xinjiang Mountain contract. The rest of the vassal sects are nothing but grass. As long as you see the miserable situation of Guohuifeng, you will naturally be honest. How to force her and Zhu Huang to completely tear their faces off. I have a plan of my own, just wait and watch the fun. Ancestor Xia on the Yujiao Peak, can Yup Yuran be reliable? I promise to let him also serve as the patriarch of the Xiashan Huangzujian sect after I have done it. Yuper has no reason not to agree. I always feel that this kid is a white-eyed wolf, born with a backbone. Is there a backlash? Not very good. After the dust settles, where can he turn back? Having said that, Xianxia looked at Yan Chu with a smile. Are you going to oppose the Emperor Zhu first and then me? Just rely on him as a Jindan sword cultivator? Yan Chu heard the meaning of the old patriarch and was slightly embarrassed. Patriarch Xia has overestimated me. How can I be the suzerain, and I have no such ambition and strength? A few tales very clear. In the future I will be able to serve as the master of the sect and also serve as the mountain master going down the mountain, and I will already be satisfied. Yuzi is a smart person and I can tell you it all. I didn't say anything at all. If he rushes to the Zhu Emperor's side to frame my ancestor and want to usurp the throne, I admire the courage of this kid. Xiaoyingrui suddenly squinted and smiled and said, Yan Chu, if you can enter the sect after going down the mountain, you must step down as the master of the sect. When Yan Chu saw that Xiaoyingrui didn't seem to be joking, the old Yuan Ying's eyes were hot in an instant, and he said decisively, no problem. What about the next sect master? He is also a genuine sect master. In the 3,000 years of Aquarius, there are only a few sects, and how many people have served as the suzerain? Previously, Xiaoyingrui was in a discussion at the Patriarch's Hall and suddenly suggested to the various peak swordsmen of Xinjiang Mountain, regardless of men, women or children, regardless of realm or origin, as long as they wanted, they could rush to the wild world to make meritorious deeds, use swords to kill demons, and he, Xia Yuantue and Man Yefeng, can lead the team and travel across the world by ferry through a passage to the ruins. As soon as these words came out, there was an uproar in the hall, and many old Jianxiu who were used to leaving the stage halfway through the discussion immediately gave this old patriarch who had been in seclusion for many years a high glance. But the sect master Zhu Huang only said that this matter is important and needs to be considered in the long run. Soon Bamboo Emperor came to the full moon peak and complained about why the uncle did not say hello in advance and went his own way. Xia Yunhe said that he was only traveling far to practice, and he would not rush to the battlefield seriously. Even if he wanted to fight the demon clan, he would make arrangements early so that he would be able to reverse the perception of Aquarius Island towards our Xinjiang Mountain. The Bamboo Emperor was silent, and when he left, he was very depressed. Nowadays, the peaks of Xinjiang Mountain, especially those young monks with strong vigor, are extremely dissatisfied with the sect master Bamboo Emperor. In particular, the agreement with Luopao Mountain to erect a monument on the boundary is regarded as a humiliation that has not been seen in Xinjiang Mountain for thousands of years. Coupled with the fact that Xinjiang Mountain tried to establish the next sect, it was no longer a matter of fact. The sudden departure of Chao Ping, the patrolling envoy, made it clear that the Dali court chose to favor Luopao Mountain. Name Xinjiang Mountain has become the laughingstock of a continent. It should have been a brand new kendo sect in Aquarius, but the young sword cultivators have no face to go down the mountain to go out to practice. Luckily, the bamboo basket was empty, and the original hope of having two sects in one mountain became a bubble, and the many benefits of having one sect became a fantasy. To put it simply, it was the Bamboo Emperor who changed from a mountain master to a sect master, and his personal prestige dropped to the bottom. If there is only one sword cultivator, the Bamboo Emperor in Xinjiang Mountain, who is in the upper 5 realms, in fact, no matter what, it will not be able to shake the position of the suzerain of the Bamboo Emperor. However, Xia Yuansue, the uncle of the Bamboo Emperor coincidentally, is also a sword immortal in the Jade Pure realm. Master Xia, what did Tao Yanbo say? Naturally, I have a grudge against my nephew, not to mention the fact that the mountain was closed and I was forced to retreat and think about it, and everyone felt that it was a great shame. Besides, Tao Yanbo knew that if he still wanted to be with that nephew. When the surnamed Qin found his way back, as long as the Emperor Bamboo was the owner of the mountain for one day, it would be a fool's dream, and he had to change the dynasty. Otherwise, if the mountain was closed for 60 years, there would be no way to get any sword repair embryos. The top of the girl's mountain is a lesson from the past. Yan Chu nodded. Tao Yanbo really had a reason to jump over the wall. It has its own water dragon peak plus the full moon peak of the ancestor of the Jade Pure Realm, and Tao Yanbo's Chilling Mountain, so it is not necessary to mention the other peaks. The Bamboo Emperor is in Jingyang Mountain. Except for his from his family's ancestral mountain line, Bamboo Emperor is almost a veritable loner. Xianxia said with a smile. To be honest, if I were in the position of Emperor Bamboo as the sect master, facing the aggressive and well-prepared viewing ceremony, I'm afraid I wouldn't be much better than him. Shaking her head, Xiaoyu tutade. I can only blame my nephew for his bad life. I, the uncle, have no choice but to share his worries for him. When the Bamboo Emperor was in the nascent Soul Realm, he met Li Tuanjing from Fenglei Garden, and not long after he entered the Jade Pure Realm, he met the two young people again. Yan Chu raised his glass. Here I wish old ancestor Xia to change his seat. Xianxia also raised his glass and smiled lightly. It's easy to say. Yan Chu suddenly slapped himself lightly. Actually, it's time to call Sect Master Xia now. Xianxia burst out laughing and each drank it. Bamboo Branch Pai Jizu Mountain. In an unremarkable elegant mansion, an elderly female revisionist was entertaining a famous guest. She is the peak master of Jizu Mountain, Liang Yuping's master, and the current patriarch of Zhuji sect. And the guest is the Bamboo Emperor. In the Zhuji sect, after Guo Huifeng took over, it gradually divided into two veins, Xiaoyu Mountain and Jizu Mountain. It is not easy to say that the two sides are in the same situation, but there are also undercurrents. In fact, the most fundamental difference lies in the relationship between the two. Yangshan drifted further and further away, and finally broke away from the subordinate status, or simply took refuge in Zhengyangshan. The Bamboo Emperor was playing with a bamboo yellow paper knife refined on the mountain. The scholarly family at the foot of the mountain is mostly used to cut rice paper, and this one in the hands of the Emperor Bamboo can also cut gold and stone. The Bamboo Emperor put the paper cutter back into the guqin-shaped wooden box, handed it to the female nun and said with a smile, I'll send it to you. She took the knife. After a little thought, she knew what it meant and asked her to help. He killed with a knife. Emperor Zhu smiled. Don't think too much, gifts are just gifts. You don't have to do anything extra, otherwise it will only do bad things. Besides, you finally have a place to stay and Guo Huifeng is still a senior sister, why bother cannibalism? I hope you can help Guo Huifeng when the time comes so that this farce will not end up too far. That person is much smarter than you and of course much smarter than me. He was greatly surprised. After confirming that he was not joking, she asked in a heartfelt voice, how does the sect master determine that he must be hiding somewhere now, and he must be minding this business? Intuition. In case that person deliberately stands by, what will the sect master do? The Bamboo Emperor said indifferently, as long as Xia Yintue is dead, what kind of storms can Yan Chu and Tao Yanbo, who have no hope of going to the 5 realms in this life, create a storm? One of them was that Emperor Bamboo didn't tell the female cultivator. It was under his instigation that Qiu Lingshan Tao Yanbo took the initiative to collude with the uncle. On the other hand, Eugene from Yujiao Peak was much smarter than Emperor Bamboo imagined, and dared to take the initiative to expose his uncle's treason and usurpation. By the Wild Creek, the out-of-the-way acquaintance named Qin Jiu started fishing. By Ni said goodbye to the sect master and went back to the scattered flower beach alone. He found that the old guy knew how to take a break. He was squatting beside an apricot tree with his arms wrapped around his sleeves and stomping his feet gently. After drinking a pot of wine, he took the sheep with him and stared at the water. The old man paced to the stream and said with a smile, "Don't forget 2 pots of turpentine wine." Stale raised his head. What? Uncle Bai sat on the side and didn't care about the kid's foolishness. He looked up at Xingshu and sighed for no reason. I just entered the Zhuji school back then and I remember the first time I followed my master to this jade mountain. Walking all the way, I felt that the river was full of apricot blossoms and it looked good, but I thought of a proverb from my hometown, and I always felt that it was not a good taste. If it was taboo, I told master directly, but master told me that there is a saying at the bottom of the mountain, but there is a principle on the mountain, and this principle is not only not bad but has a very good meaning. Bai Bo asked with a smile, "Do you know what this sentence means on the mountain?" The man shook his head. "Uncle Bai, how can you guess?" Uncle Bai nodded. "I told master the same way back then." Qin Pingon smiled and said, "Is there an answer later?" Uncle Bai changed completely, clasped the back of his head with both hands and said lazily, I just read an illusion by chance. According to legend, there is a real person with white bones who is far away and independent. He once slept under a plum tree for a long time and finally realized the truth. The road to immortality. Qin Pingon looked ahead, smiled and said, Is Director Lu just so idle? The old man beside him was clearly possessed by Lu Qin using a secret method. Lu Qin quickly put his finger to his mouth. Don't say anything, we can talk a little more. Dare to ask Headmaster Lu, how did you find me? Try your luck. Don't talk about it, I believe Li Xing will come here soon. Remember to go to Gongdalin and help to see how Lu Cha's fishing skills are now. Lu Qin said helplessly, the reason why Pin Dao came to Howren secretly is that he couldn't help but want to ask so that I can confirm with you whether there is time in the world, whether it is composed of countless fixed stills. When you go out you can't treat people with sincerity? Okay, I'm afraid of you, Qin Pingon, you and I have a thorough understanding. The two of us opened the skylight and said something bright. Did you imprison a certain fake of me? Yes. Sort of coming. Chapter 10-11. At noon the sun is in the sky. Qin Pingon put the bamboo pole on the ground, stood up, raised his toes, picked up the wine jug, took a sip of the wine, talk while walking. Lu Qin temporarily lived in the old man's lodging, and took a walk by the stream with Qin Pingon. In the eyes of others it doesn't seem strange. Uncle Bai, who is the mining officer of Jade Mountain, is old and has always been friends with outsiders. Qin Pingon said, it's just a false image created out of thin air. Why did Zhang Jiao make such a move to recruit teachers and move the crowd? He did not hesitate to violate the ritual system of the Confucian Temple and sneak into the vast world without authorization. Unless... Lu Qin smiled and said, unless Pin Dao originally had one of his thoughts, he never took it back and it was always floating in Howren for a long time. Since Pin Dao didn't come from Baiyujing, it's not a violation of the rules of the Confucian Temple. Qin Pingon shook his head. Unless Headmaster Lu wants to enter the 15th realm immediately, to fill the vacancy after Master's dispersal and before Big Headmaster returned to Baiyujing, so as to shock the 14 states of Qingming. It can be regarded as a ferry boat. Presumably Qingming is also the same, just as there is an old saying, if you don't cultivate morality all people in the boat will be enemies. There is an answer in this heart. As a result, after deductions, Zhang Lu found that the current situation was broken, and the possibility of success was reduced without warning. He felt that something was wrong and after thinking about it he thought of me. How long can the teacher stay here? A quarter of an hour. Or a stick of incense? Qin Pingon, you're not a hard-to-guess person. Divide your mind and take risks. You want to bring the world in your heart to the truth and use techniques to approach the truth. As a result you are seen through by outsiders. Ordinary monks will still be indecisive. Think about it. A compromise. You are different. There are only two choices. One is to wait and see the change and bet on a false alarm. Then while notifying the Confucian Temple sages sitting in the sky to close the door and helping to stare at the barrier between heaven and earth, you called Mr. Mo and Miss Ye to block the road. Qin Pingon, after so many years, it seems that you still haven't completely changed this kind of right or wrong. Thoughts and ideas. The two Daoist friends, who had a rather complicated relationship, reunited in a foreign country, but here they are talking in different ways. What's the difference between an idea and a train of thought? Thoughts can be boundless and boundless, but ideas are organized and organized. Qin Pingon nodded. Does this count as a difference in mind? For example, the same path gradually develops sensibility and rationality. Lu Qin smiled and said, Heaven learns to cultivate the mind and people learn to cultivate one's body. The body is at peace and happiness, that is, the gods and people. It may be said in a general way, and the poor Taoist will give a simple example: the tablet of the gods of later generations, the patriarch's hall on the mountain and the folk ancestral hall below the mountain. There are also imperial temples in Igua. They are generally used to worship ancestors and ancestors. The gods and gods are set to die. The names of the deceased are written among the gods. The small characters on the side are the names of the gods and ancestors. If there is a real difference in the mind, who is the master and who is the second? Qin Pingon wondered, can you make a metaphor like that? Certainly. Lu Qin said, no. Qin Pingon turned his head. If it wasn't for Uncle Bai's body he really wanted to punch him. Lu Qin said, Pin Dao is just to prove that you guessed wrong. There is no time limit for a quarter of an hour and a stick of incense. Pin Dao can stay as long as he wants in Howren World, and the Confucian Temple can't control Pin Dao. Qin Pingon suddenly said, "Actually, I was wrong at the beginning. Human sensibility and rationality do not actually diverge from two paths, but go together in the same vein. There is sensibility before rationality. No, it is rationality before sensibility. The difference between heaven and human desires. Just like what you call the gods who are enshrined in the worshippers. Trace the origin. You can go back to the ancestors of a surname and then go up. The body is in the person and the heart is in the heart." Sky. The little chicken Lu Chen, pecking at the rice, nodded vigorously. "Oh, to be able to explain it like this, isn't it because the poor road gave a blind cat to see a dead mouse? It's wonderful." Lu Chen first raised his head to look at the sun, then looked around and shook his sleeves. "It really is a big word, and the words of the Tao are like a raging fire." Qin Pingon sighed. "Master Lu is amazing. I found my second clone so quickly." Lu Chen smiled and said, "Anyway, if you have nothing to do, it's better to guess the riddle and solve the problem." With a snort, Lu Chen turned his body and walked sideways, looking at Qin Pingan's profile. "This place knows that the guests are old. The Taoist priest Wu Di of Yushuan, plus the avatar of the mangosteen. This is already 3 minds, and then again. In addition, the god master of the village school at the foot of the mountain in Yunzhou, who opened the hall and studied, must not move around very much, not moving like a mountain, that is, it is like the North Pole in the sky, pulling in a straight line from afar. Could it be that the rest of the clones are divided into 7 roads? Well, Pin Dao finally figured it out. Turned out to be a Big Dipper array of the heaven and earth. Did Master Qin get the inspiration from the golden summit of Tonggishao? It is a great honor. Since the world is determined by the rise and fall of the sun and the moon, and the north and south are determined by the purple star, this means that the 7 minds of Qin Shanzhu are attached to the avatar of Fulu. Are there certain restrictions on the scope of activities in Pingzhou? The hiding places of the remaining 3 clones. Rome. Pin Dao guessed Daliu Prefecture, the area of Qingxing country south of Dadu. The last one a little difficult guess. Anyway, in order to protect the 7 grains of mind from being intercepted by the monks, and to break them down, Shanzhu Qin really put a lot of thought into it. With such a formation, Qin Ping's distraction, which was originally a very risky act, became much more stable. Through the big formation, it was like setting up a life-continuing lamp for the 7 souls scattered all over the place. Unless they were deliberately targeted by the great monks of the unpredictable prophet, it would be difficult for the Earth Immortals of Aquarius continent to strip off and detain the minds of their clones. Human Qi practitioners don't even have a soul. When Qin Pingan's mind disappeared and returned to the Patriarch Hall, revealing the true face of the talisman and puppet, those cultivators would understand that they had provoked something they shouldn't have provoked. Qin Pingan said, "Actually, there are 2 auxiliary hidden stars who are responsible for cooperating from the side, lest the Earth Immortal will break a certain talisman paper too easily, and the whole body will fall short, so I must immediately take back all the talisman clones." Lu Chen sighed and said, "No wonder when you were in Mud Bottle Alley, you would tell Pin Dao that you have a good memory and remember everything you see." At that time, the young man with straw sandals in the Mud Bottle Alley would still respectfully call himself Dao Chong Lu, which is really nostalgic. From Daoist Lu Chen the bastard to the current headmaster Lu, I feel very sad. Lu Chen is now glad that he didn't leave this trip in vain. It is definitely a worthwhile trip. The current Qin Pingon is considered to be practicing in the mountains, and he has already reached the middle of the mountain. The so-called halfway of the mountain by Lu Chen is different from ordinary Qi practitioners. The location where you can see the scenery on the top of the mountain is qualified to be said to be halfway up the mountain, which has no absolute relationship with the level of the realm. For example, many great cultivators of the Ascension realm have never found an opportunity for the path in their lives. In Lu Chen's eyes, it is still the kind of future the layman on the mountainside. Now Qin Pingon has found a very broad kendo by virtue of the superposition of the 2 flying swords' life and magical powers, that is, through seeing, hearing, hearsay and imagining many methods, one after another small 1,000 worlds are assembled. If it is said that before returning to Howren World from the Great Wall of Sword Qi, it was just a slightly immature idea, then when Qin Pingon began to refine a long river of time through gold and copper coins, especially this trip to the outside world has improved a moon in the well, the rank of the flying sword Qin Pingan's avatars, the 7 Qin Pingon, everything that he saw, heard, thought in the different worlds of Aquarius Island is a kind of real world all the time. As the refining sword, that sharpens the sword in the dragon-slaying platform. This way of practicing swordsmanship makes Lu Chen feel a lot more eye-opening. For example, what I saw in the wine bureau today by Ni Xiaozan and Liang Yuping, the three people's body, appearance, eyebrows, voice, tone, attitude, look have been recorded by Zhika, and they have been quietly integrated into the main body Qin Pingan's swordsmanship world. In short, all the characters and landscapes are a word on the road that Qin Pingan walks on. So the banquet at the Sanhua Beach and Sayu Mountain seems to form a sentence. The more words that make up this sentence, the more complex and the more detailed the content, the closer it is to the truth, that is opposed to the fake. As Lu Chen asked before, is there time in the world? Is a one composed of an infinite number of stationary stills? When Lu Chen said this, he regarded the whole world as a book that was completely static. When Lu Chen identified the one, he started to turn the book, and the characters and scenes in the book would flow consciously and passively. And this statement by Lu Chen is obviously of the same origin and different from that of Li Shixing. Suddenly forgetting a certain word and suddenly remembering a certain thing, it seems that I have experienced. Life is alive, how sad. The grief of unfounded worry and the cry of the end of the road made Lu Chen feel sad. It's like Qin Pingan was out of the sky before, and on the way back to Haoran with Xiaomao and Bai Jing Yufeng, Bai Jing threw him a stack of paper with pictures of ancient landscapes. At that time, Qin Pingan felt like a little book, more like Pei Qian in class drawing a certain little person on the corner of the page in different poses and quickly turning the page is a complete set of actions. Therefore, when Qin Pingan, the writer of the book, picks out this sentence separately and puts it into the long river of time in the cage, others will see it in the future and they will feel more real. If it is a banquet today, it is a short sentence, then Taoist Wu Di is in the house in Yongning County, the capital of Yushuan Kingdom, the female ghost Shui Rui, the young Zhang Ho and the flowers and plants in the courtyard, plus going out every day drinking drinks with those Yamen subordinate officials, chatting on the street, setting up stalls to tell people's fortune-telling. It's a long sentence that has been stretched to several months. And the false appearance of Lu Chen is the sect of all laws like the first God Lord tablet. But when Qin Pingan was chatting with Li Shixing, when the two sides talked about Zhou Zi, Qin Pingan thought, once had an idea that as an anchor for the positioning of the river, it could not be Lu Xian. This is Qin Pingan's self-deception, similar to an inertial thought. And this method of first deceiving oneself, then deceiving others, and then deceiving the sky was naturally learned by Qin Pingan and Cui Yu, but unfortunately they could not learn everything. Know the answer to the test question and then go back and trace an extremely tedious problem-solving process. At the same time, it happened to be this kind of superfluous self-deception. Qin Pingan had this thought, which was equivalent to saying that Lu Chen's name was Tepu. This made Lu Chen, who was also watching from afar, suddenly notice something was wrong, and he also began to push back. It was another lingering fear, even not inferior to the impending ambush of the previous Sword Qi Great Wall. And if Lu Chen never left the Qingming world, did not join in the fun, and was isolated from the heavenly secret by a big world, maybe this thread will be missed. Lu Chen's return to Haoran this time is really not illegal smuggling, but reported to Li Xing in advance. There is really a serious matter coming. As for seeing Qin Pingan, it's just a drop-in. Rong Pindao calculates it again. This year's Qingming Day, the mouth of the seven-star array of Qin Shanju points to the Yongjia Street in the capital of Yushuan Kingdom. Lu Chen has always learned to walk with crabs, followed in the footsteps of Qin Pingan and asked, "It's just a horse, Kushuan, is it worth your distraction to confer a god?" Lu Chen's so-called Fengshen is not the title of Fengjing, but the title of ban and mountain. Qin Pingan and Ma Kushuan knew very well that there was an old debt and some people collected the debt and some paid it back. Maybe 2, maybe 3. If Ma Kushuan had to stop him, it might be 3 or 4. Will die. Lu Chen turned around and kicked the stone on the road into the stream with one foot. It stands to reason that even if Ma Kuxuan's parents can become gods of mountains and rivers all the way, and invisibly get the protection of the divine way of the monarch mansion of Xia Mountain in one continent, so what? Live your revenge? Yes, it turns out that it is indeed a bit tricky. This couple is actually going to join the ranks of the city god and obtain the amulet of the official ultimatum of the underworld, which is a fork in the road with the gods of mountains and rivers. Oh, more than an amulet, it is the most veritable life-saving amulet in the world. It's strange how to do it with the mean behavior of Ma Kuxuan's parents, even if they want to rely on various acts of kindness, accumulating yin and virtue ranks in this list. But Fengdu Hades has had the iron rule of doing good at heart is not rewarded since ancient times. People in the world, even if they are proficient in the laws of the underworld, want to accumulate merits and exploit loopholes, then this threshold alone, they are destined to be unable to cross, and it is pure wishful thinking to want to be the high-ranking city god. Qin Pingon finally said, Ma Kuxuan is very smart. He has long deliberately bypassed the two of them, secretly arranged manpower in the capital of Yushuan Kingdom, and only forced his parents to do certain things, but deliberately did not explain the reason. He did not even allow them to ask why, and he used extremely harsh words to warn or even intimidate his parents. It is better to teach a man to fish than to give him a fish. Ma Kuxuan does the opposite. Maybe a bit slower, but it is effective. Lu Chen smiled and said, when did Ma Kuxuan start this plan? Qin Pingon said, it's not too late and it's definitely not too early. Back then, the Ma family in Xing moved out of the town together with the group of relatives, directly out of the Dali dynasty at that time, and went to the Yushuan country in the border of Xia. At that time Ma Kuxuan was arrogant. He didn't think I was qualified to be his enemy. The reason why he let his parents move out of his hometown was probably because he was worried about their fate. He was more like Kai Jingjian and Fu Nanhua. To practice in Zhenwu Mountain, it is impossible to stare at Lizhu Cave all the time. When I left the Sword Qi Great Wall for the first time and returned to Aquarius Island, especially when I walked out of Shujian Lake, Ma Kuxuan might have become wary, but a larger proportion is that he deliberately disgusted me and made me want to take revenge. But I was unable to take revenge for a long time, and I even felt hopeless for revenge for the rest of my life, and wanted me to live in hatred and guilt for the rest of my life. When I served as the hidden officer of the Great Wall of Sword Qi and the news came back to Howren World, Ma Kuxuan began to really regard me as in order to threaten. I carefully studied what was done in front of and behind the scenes of the Ma stage in Yushuan Kingdom. It was in those few years that the younger brothers of various houses began to make frequent shots, and even began to try to pass the imperial examinations of their descendants, get official orders, shine on the lintel, and later on, trying to get one or several people to get the imperial posthumous title posthumously to the family, and many other measures all began to be carried out step by step. The only accident is that Ma Kuxuan did not expect that I would catch up with him so quickly. The last time Luopao Mountain visited Xingyang Mountain, Ma Kuxuan had followed the advice of Yu Shiwu of Zhenwu Mountain. It's a pity that Qin Pingon almost dismantled the entire Xingyang Mountain, and still did not give Ma Kuxuan the chance to take action. Qin Pingon smiled and said, when Ma Kuxuan's parents become the city gods of the Yushuan country, I believe that the first thing they will clean up will be the evildoers in the Ma family, and they will be able to secure their golden bodies. The temple of the city god, Gao Xing, the civil judge, was transferred out of the capital of Yushuan Kingdom. Ji Xiaoping, the former head of the Yin and Yang division, was promoted to the literary judge. Lu Chen smiled and said, as expected of Ma Kuxuan, he is entrusted with good intentions. The city gods at all levels in a country are different from the gods of mountains and rivers. Although the Yueshenzhen has the right to govern the two, the real superior of the former is the Fengdu underworld. In short, the Yueshenzhen can directly decide the promotion of the landscape gods, and even the life and death can be claimed, but it is not qualified to punish the city gods at all levels, and must be handed over to Fengdu for conviction according to the law. That is to say, the Daoist Mountain Monarch's mansion has part of the right to convict the city gods at all levels, but no execution power. In the Xianxia officialdom, the temple of the city god is like the censor's desk of the imperial court of a country. Of course, Ma Kuxuan was able to do this because Lizidongshan formed a cycle of heaven and earth. In the past, the life and death and sins of the people in the small town were not controlled by the underworld and the underworld within Fengdu. Lu Chen asked, is there a way to crack it? Qin Pingon nodded and said, yes. The kind of way that your sword cultivators are unreasonable once in a while. On the contrary, follow the rules. Not to mention the city god temple of the Yushuan Kingdom and the Fengdu underworld, there is no fault at all. Since there is no fault, there is no way to protect Ma Kuxuan's parents according to the laws of the underworld, and in the end they can only be fair. Act without favoritism. If you don't do this, you will only be entangled, and when will the grievances be repaid? The previous generation's grievances, our generation should thoroughly understand, repaying kindness and revenge and not leaving it to the next generation. Lu Chen smiled and said, Ma Kuxuan has been thinking about everything and he lost everything. Wouldn't he be mad at you? Qin Pingon said, His mind is tenacious and he can't be mad at him. Lu Chen was speechless. Pindao is just joking with you, you don't need to be so rigid. Lu Chen changed a more pleasing topic. Chen Pingon, you are really acting like a guest. Previously, Lu Chen had suggested that Chen Pingon should be an acquaintance who was sent to us when he had the opportunity, which would be very interesting. Chen Pingon smiled and said, being kind is like a flow. Lu Xianxia sighed, what you see with your eyes is the world, how precious and how fragile a person's memory is. The setting sun is about to set, and the purple and green are in all shapes and sizes, changing in an instant like a dream. Now isn't it noon, why is it sunset? Too big, Lu Chen knew something was wrong and immediately closed his eyes and opened them again. Often walking by the river without wet shoes, miserable. You Chen Pingon are too reluctant to remember the old feelings. Pindao is the old Yulao who helps you in Ning's red line. By the river, Uncle Bai sat beside the apricot tree and asked, how many fish have you caught? The squatting Chen Pingon held a fishing rod and smiled. There is no catch for the time being, only one big fish has bit the bait, but even if he is hooked he may not be able to walk ashore. Uncle Bai smiled and said, you're a chi trainer anyway, but you still can't catch a fish? Chen Pingon raised his face and nodded and said, the fish has become fine. Uncle Bai laughed dumbly, and the stinky boy is quite good at telling jokes. In a bizarre and mysterious realm, Lu Chen and a Lu Chen looked at each other like looking in a mirror, so there were countless Lu Chens in the eyes of both sides. Sort of coming Chapter 10-12. At the gate of Luopao Mountain, the grain of millet is sitting in danger, and the golden pole and the green bamboo stick are on the table. Daoist Master Xianwei was chatting hotly with a young Taoist priest wearing a lotus crown. The other party claimed to have met the mountain master at the end of Qingping, and was a close friend of Jingqing Taoist friend. The little girl in black kept staring at the teacups of the two Taoist priests. I saw them drinking, but they didn't know the bottom and they didn't give any chance to help me with water. She was bored and subconsciously stretched out her hand, twisted the green bamboo stick, rolled gently, making a creaking noise. She immediately stopped, and sure enough, seeing the foreign Taoist priest turning her head around, Xiaomi quickly apologized and then straightened her back. Stretched out a hand forward and motioned for the two of you to continue the discussion. The Taoist had a good temper and said with a smile, it's okay, there are often thin as wild cranes chatting and quarreling in the dojo, and if anyone mentions something exciting, a jade chime will sound, which is very crisp and sweet. On the mountain, a boy in Tsing-yi first threw his sleeves and swayed, walking from the bluestone road in the mountain to the Shinto steps that led to the temple on the top of the mountain in the past. Whether or not he was lazy, Chen Lingjun put his hands on his hips and looked at the mountain gate. His heart tightened, and he quickly stretched out a palm to cover his eyebrows. Shit, I didn't read it wrong. It really was the one who suffered thousands of knives and actually killed himself at his door. His master's real body was still working as a teacher at the school. Chen Lingjun immediately shrank his neck and tiptoed, and was about to return to his residence. When he arrived at the house, he jumped into the bed. The blanket was stuffed and thunder didn't even want to wake him up. Fellow Daoist Jingqing, don't pretend that you can't see Pindao. Come to the foot of the mountain to drink tea together. Chen Lingjun covered his ears with his hands, pretending that he couldn't hear the voice of his heart, just burying his head and running all the way, and said to himself, last night the rain poured, the thunder and lightning, the wind pulled the wood, the building was crumbling. My dear, this kind of momentum is really terrible. The bed and the entire residence are like a leaf boat in the pine waves and sea waves, deafening. No wonder I can't hear anything all day today, it was really deafening. What is good? How is this good? As a result, with a hand holding his head, Chen Lingjun looked up and saw that it was his own master with a warm smile. Let's go down the mountain to entertain guests together. The boy in Tsing-yi coughed, and suddenly he was bold. All right, I have to go meet that uninvited guest for a while. It's not a day or two to see him unpleasant, whether it's bearable or unbearable. The mountain master in front of him, although it is not the real body of the master, why not? The last time I watched the opening ceremony of the Huangliang sect in Lushan, the mountain owner was not around, and I didn't deal with this man named Lu very well. I lost a little face on the ground and I have to find a place today. Lu Chen turned his head and saw Chen Pingon in a green shirt who came down the mountain, with some ink stains on his hands. The Lord of God was in the school at the foot of the mountain near the source of the Shimei River, and Chen Pingon was also one of the clones in front of him. He was responsible for copying books, and recording and summarizing what the other 6 people saw and heard. Lu Chen's eyes complained, Qin Pingon, Pin Dao is visiting today and he has no gifts and no gifts. Why are you still angry? It turned out that Lu Qin and his mind had completely lost the traction of the avenue on the side of the Sanhua Beach in the Jade Mountain. To say that he was inattentive and said was done by Gao Gu of Huayang Palace and Defei Mountain, that's all, but Qin Pingon is still only in the nascent soul realm. When Qin Pingon is in the ascension realm, is it still worth it? Qin Lingjun glared and said, how arrogant, so bold, how dare you call my mountain master by his name? As long as the good mountain master stayed by his side, Qin Lingjun would be almost completely drunk. Fellow Daoist Jingqing, wait, there will always be a time when the two of us will meet again. Lu Qin gave the boy in Xingyi a thumbs up. When the time comes, the poor road will give you a bowl, and the fellow sees the two with tears in their eyes, and you are crying so hard, you can invite the poor road back to drink a bowl of bitter wine. Qin Lingjun's face was embarrassed and he reached out and grabbed Qin Pingan's sleeve. Because I remembered a mantra of Bai Xian, don't go on the road at night, don't be alone. Qin Pingan shook his sleeves and held down the head of the boy in Xingyi. It's on his own territory anyway, he said that a loser will not lose. It's different when someone supports him. Qin Lingjun put his hands on his hips and moved his mouth slightly. It seemed that he was brewing a killer trick. Lu Qin said angrily, don't blame me if you dare to spit. Having said that, Lu Qin took a sip of tea from the bowl, raised his head and finished drinking. Lu Qin shook his head, his Adam's apple moved slightly, then fight on your own merits. Qin Lingjun thought about it. Xiaomi Meili hurriedly ran to Qin Pingan's side, stood on tiptoe, put his hand to his mouth and whispered information. Good mountain master, the Daoist Lu said just now that you both went out to practice together, trekking mountains and rivers, and I don't know how many mountains and rivers you have traveled. Water has gone through all kinds of difficulties and dangers, but fortunately the brothers worked together to break the gold, and finally there were no surprises every time, and then one time in a place called Kaiyushan he paid you a treat, saved a wine bureau, and you were in front of you. A fairy named Liang Yuping with the Taoist name Jiaoshan praised her in front of her for her good looks. Of course I don't believe it at all. Daoist Xianwei. Doubtful. The Daoist master Xianwei also asked how fat and thin the girl Liang was. Daoist Lu said that the fairy sister was so beautiful and beautiful. He used 7 or 8 idioms. After listening to it for a long time, Daoist Xianwei just said, Su. Daoist Lu immediately changed the popular statement, saying that Miss Liang from the front and the back is excellent, but the side view is a little dull, and Daoist Xianwei let out a long sigh when he heard the words. After picking up a bowl of tea I became lethargic. After that, the two Taoist priests seemed to be in pairs. One said that they were walking in the snow, and the other said that there was a fire in the sky. The rest still have a lot of twists and turns. I don't even remember where I went. Good man Mountain Lord, you walked to the gate of the mountain. Just now Daoist Lu talked about the decline of the divine way and revered fate. And what should you revere in the decline of fate? Qin Lingjun pricked up his ears. What else? It is understandable and excusable to want to come to the mountain master to say a few scenes at the wine table. Xianwei was stunned. Millet grains, did you listen carefully? Before you sat there yawning, confused, and the chicken pecking at the rice, was it all an illusion? It's just that Pin Dao and Lu Daochang talked so much about serious knowledge, why can't you remember them, but these few irrelevant idle days remember so firmly? Xiaomi Meili didn't forget to grin at the Daoist Immortal way and extended his thumb, both to say good things and to ask for credit. Good man Mountain Master, our Daoist Immortal way is very considerate in hospitality. I see it all in my eyes, no leaks, talk and do things very stable. Qin Pingan walked behind the Xianwei who had been praised, put his hands on the shoulders of his janitor and complained softly, Chen's character cannot be trusted by outsiders. After all, he is an outsider, so let him go, Xianwei said. Chang is his own family, how can he be dubious? Captain Xian called Chu and said, I was taken to the ditch. Lu Qin supported the lotus crown on his head and said with a smile, Xiaoli Daoist Xianwei, I have nothing to do with you here. Rong Pin Dao Shanju Qin and Daoist Jingqing have a sweet memory. Qin Pingan nodded, and Xiaomi Meili got up obediently and returned to the mountain, planning to talk to Sister Nuanshu at the foot of the mountain, and met a young Taoist priest named Lu who spoke witty and friendly. Xianwei said goodbye, went to sit on the bamboo chair at the door, and took out a book with a strong rubbing from his arms. Hey, I got it wrong, and quickly changed to a brand new serious book. Qin Lingjun sat on a bench with the good man Mountain Master, and found that he needed to face the headmaster Lu face to face, so he moved his little by little and slowly moved to the other end of the bench to sit on. I still felt uneasy, so I raced my feet, turned around and faced the mountain. I suddenly felt that the scenery was unique here. Lu Chen looked at the back of the boy in Xingyi, smiled and grabbed the white bowl. The mouth of the bowl was facing down and a drop of tea was dropped on the table. In an instant, clouds and mist rose and a landscape painting appeared. It is a majestic mountain range. There is a call on the top of the ancestor, a small bridge and flowing water in the call, and an ancient temple. Qin Pingon glanced at it and asked, "Is there a tree missing?" Lu Chen shook his wrist and another drop of tea fell on the table and said with surprise, "Is Lord Qin so familiar with the customs of our Qingming world?" Qin Pingon smiled and said, "The world of Qingming is a geographical situation of 9 mountains and 1 water. If Qin Lingjun followed you here, it would be difficult for the Yufu dynasty to succeed, right?" Lu Chen smiled and said, "It's a matter of human action, and there are poor people who are waving the flag and shouting, advocating and building momentum. I really don't dare to say whether it will be successful or not." When Qin Lingjun heard the words, he immediately turned around and put his hands on the table. "What are you talking about?" The picture on the table is located on the border between Yongzhou and Peizhou in the Qingming world, and the 2 states are separated by a big ditch. In Yongzhou, on the top of the mountain range at the bottom of the water, there is a place recorded as a dressing table, commonly known as wash basin, with a stone bridge spanning the stream, named Huilong Bridge. There is a mountain shrine by the bridge which hides one of the joint cuts in the past. There is a 10,000-year-old camphor tree outside the temple, which is rumored to be in charge of the luck of the 4 states of Qingming. Zhou Xian, the empress of the Yufu dynasty, is going to hold a grand ceremony here. With her character, Lu Chen knows with her that she will chop 4 branches. Before Lu Chen traveled far to go to Lizhu Cave, he had promised this Zhou Xian that he would bring a chief worshipper to her and the Yufu dynasty. As a result, our headmaster Lu talked like a fart and dragged on and on. Last time, Lu Chen he even had the face to go to the mountain god temple, so he turned his face and refused to admit it. As Qin Pingon said, the Qingming world is different from the Haoran world with abundant water transportation. Qin Pingon suddenly said, "Before the old Guanzhou left Haoran Xianxia, he took away a lot of Donghai seawater. According to his seniority, Lei Guanzi can be regarded as the uncle of Lu Zhangjiao, and if the water transport is tilted to the source of Dadu, Qin Lingjun will rely on it again. The opportunity to walk into the sea and turn into a dragon is indeed not small. After all, this kind of water has never happened before, and it is estimated that there will be no more in the future. The old master gave water transportation and merits, adding water to Dadu and entering the sea violently. If Headmaster Lu and Uncle Shi have negotiated in advance, they can transfer part of the merits to Qin Lingjun, and then the monks from the Yufu dynasty will be dedicated to protecting the Tao all the way on both sides of the strait. Headmaster Lu is watching secretly to rule out all accidents." Lu Chen looked at the boy in Xingyi and snorted coldly, "Fellow Daoist Jingqing, do you hear me? You are still here with Pindo's nose, not eyes or eyes. You can feel your conscience and talk about it. Who are you arguing with? Damn, this stupid little is too ungrateful. If you followed him to the Qingming world, what kind of luck would be waiting for him? Just lie down and enjoy yourself." It was Lu Chen's matchmaking. According to the agreement, he would first find a chief worshipper in the Yufu dynasty. The Emperor Zhou Xian was a very courageous woman, and she would definitely exhaust the treasury to ensure Qin Lingjun's success in Data's escape. He turned into a dragon and left. No accident, he can compete with Wang Zhu of the Mud Bottle Alley to compete for the great chance of becoming the first real dragon in the world. When the real dragon reappears in the world, Qin Qinglu, who is a dragon slayer, will return to the 14th realm on this basis, and he will have to cross the world and rush to Qingming to find out. Even if this sword cultivator is not involved in the vast and wild wars, also may not be able to kill the dragon, but with Qin Qinglius' usual temper, in all likelihood, there will be a conflict with Zhou Xian, the mountain temple or the female crown Wuxia where the dojo is located in. At that time, the 10,000-year-old camphor tree will be cut off by a sword, and Zhou Xian is still divination, so now there will be chaos in several states in the world, even if it is broken. Although it is still a means to treat the symptoms and not the root cause, Lu Chen can at least delay Jiazi's time for Bai Yujing and senior brother Yu. Among them, the one who benefits the most is Qin Lingjun, a little snake in the river. He doesn't need him to do anything, and it is destined to be stable and without any sequelae. There will even be an additional Taoist protector. After all, Qin Lu only wants to maintain the 14 realms. There must be one true dragon in the world and only one. Besides, judging from the way Qin Lingjun has gotten along with the Dragon Slayer over the years, I believe that in the Yufu dynasty in Yongzhou he would only be brothers and sisters with Qin Lu, and get along very well, for example drinking a little wine every other day. As for the process of walking away, roughly as Qin Pingon said, the water of the East China Sea that Master Bixiao still puts in the sword-raising gourd is an indispensable key link. Otherwise, even if Lu Qin was in charge of Bai Yujing, he would not be able to tear down the east wall to make up for the west wall. Qin Lingjun frowned, raised a finger and said with a serious expression, "Let me slow down, I can't turn my head around for a while, I have to think carefully before making a conclusion." Lu Qin rolled his eyes and said, "You can come up with a fart with a mushy brain." Qin Pingon smiled and said, "Headmaster Lu's general meaning is that as long as you followed him to this Yongzhou, you will have great confidence that you will succeed in transforming into a dragon. Before the Wangzhu he became the first real dragon in the world. The real thing needs to be like the wind and the rain, and there is no need to worry about being targeted by the dragon killer. Ascension, the real dragon, is the chief enshrined in the Yufu dynasty. Your identity is no different from the water transport co-owners of the 14 states of Qingming, and most importantly, there is the biggest amulet because you are equivalent to the protection of Bai Yujing's avenues, a world, an immortal mansion on a mountain, a dynasty under the mountain, where to go all of them are guests, and I have to praise you, Patriarch Jingqing, you are a great hero." The boy in Xing blinked. The mountain master understood what he said. He was silent for a moment and finally asked a question, "Then what? In a foreign land you have achieved great success, you have become rich and you have new friends all over the world, but even if you put aside those wine and meat friends who only call themselves brothers at the wine table, there are also several true friends who can be called true friends who share weal and woe. But here, down and out mountain, what to do?" Qin Lingjun looked up at the mountain. There were stupid girls, millet grains, old cooks, and then turned to look at Daoist Xianwei at the door. A little further away there would be a Kukusu who often loses face, but in fact always Brother Wei who is good enough to wear a pair of chopsticks with Luopao Mountain. Qin Pingon and Lu Qin looked at each other. "How?" Lu Qin smiled. "Really? Others said like this, or to be more precise, they think so. They may be regretful knowing that this is the case, pretending to be light-hearted. At least they are swollen and fat, and they don't want to admit that they missed such an opportunity. But Qin Lingjun is really different. Just look at how Qin Lingjun has been thinking about the Yujiang water god brother over the years and helping him time and time again. You can see how much the boy in Xing who calls himself Little White Tiao in Yujiang Waves, Little Dragon King on Luapa Mountain, values loyalty. My friend is not good to me and there are always his difficulties, but I can't be indifferent to my friend. I can't make my friends feel that I have made a friend like me for nothing, otherwise I have a problem with my life. This is probably the only purpose of Qin Lingjun's life in the arena. Just like a truth, if you tell 100 people, 98 of them make sense, but there are 2 that don't make sense. Maybe one is a staunch skeptic and the other is not serious after knowing the truth. In the final analysis, Qin Lingjun was reluctant to bear all the people and everything in Luopao Mountain. Lu Qin rolled up his sleeves and put away the landscape painting on the table. Qin Pingon asked Qin Lingjun to go to the stove to fetch a pot and add water. This year the old cook picked the green tea from a few old tea trees on the other side of Huanghu Mountain, and made it by himself. The tea before the rain can stand up to brewing, and it is mountain spring water which is very sweet to drink. Qin Lingjun poured hot water into the 2 bowls on the table, but he seemed to have forgotten his own white bowl. Walking was a little buoyant, so he was not in a hurry to climb the mountain. Qin Lingjun first carried his hands and then went to Daoist Xianwei's side. He patted his shoulder and said a few sincere words before slowly climbing the mountain. Being mixed in the rivers and lakes, the righteous words are the first. The poor and the lowly cannot be moved, and the mighty cannot be surrendered. Forced by the situation, occasionally kowtow a few times, it is not ashamed, and it is also a man who can bend and stretch. Lu Qin, this melon skin, do you think I'm stupid and become a real dragon and people who kill dragons can't come and cut me? What's the brain? I'm not smart. If you're smart you can't say this kind of talk about bragging and not writing drafts, and by Yujing's 3rd headmaster I'll do it, please don't go. Seeing the millet with a golden pole on his shoulder and a green bamboo stick on his shoulder, Qin Lingjun carried it with both hands, nodded and said old-fashionedly, "A millet, it's a mountain tour." Millet didn't stop, just glanced at him. She sighed and continued to patrol the mountain. Jingqing is good or not, this is the brain, alas worry. Qin Lingjun, who originally wanted to brag a few words with Xiaoli, immediately felt that it was meaningless, not to talk about the idle days. Qin Lingjun quickly followed Xiaoli, slapped up his sleeves and patrolled the mountain together. Xing asked, "Is there still tea over there? I saw that there were quite a few days ago. It's not a problem to fill a bag. Didn't the old cook steal it?" Millet immediately pursed her lips, rolled her eyes lit up. Hey, he stomped his feet and said, "Just say it, go to sleep and look at it again. If it's gone, it's gone." Qin Lingjun pretended to be angry and said, "Old cook, this gluttonous thief is lawless. Let's go, let's talk to him." Millet Grain quickly grabbed Qin Lingjun's sleeve, frowned two pale yellow brows and said solemnly, Jingqing, I know there is a good place, there are tea slices but more." Lu Qin said coldly, forming words and sentences, layer upon layer, only adding and not subtracting. Too much is too much. Qin Pingon nodded and said, "Those clones won't stay outside for too long." Lu Qin smiled and said, "How many copies do you need? 30 or 100, or to be more stable, 3 or 500. Just like a person talking and chatting, the words that really need to be used are actually those hundreds of commonly used words. For example, the key figures that Qin Pingon carefully copied from the Yushan Bamboo Branch School, in addition to a few helpers from the outer sect Zix's lineage, the Masons of the Taiyu Mountain, there must also be the mining officer by Bo Xiaohuzhen of Shilongfeng and Liang Yuping of Jizu Mountain. Adding them together, it is estimated that there are all kinds of characters on the small 30th, but they really can be called the so-called basic of Lu Qin, only the Zhuji faction, and it is estimated that there will be no more than the number of hands. This kind of script and identity, is it a monk? Has nothing to do with the level of the realm. However, Lu Qin always felt that Qin Pingon stayed on the side of Tsuiyu Mountain, as if he wanted nothing else, and his intention was very deep. Of course, it wasn't through the Zhuji faction to stare at the trivial matter of Xingyang Mountain, so when Lu Qin decided to do a good deduction at the Sanhuatan side, Qin Pingon might have relied on the band set by Fu Lu Yuxuan. It may be some kind of instinct, grabbing a current one, pushing the boat with the current, and throwing a piece of Lu Qin's mind into the cage. It's not that Lu Qin can't forcibly break the restriction and get out of trouble, but in this way he really wants to make a complete revenge with Qin Pingon. Lu Qin is never afraid of anyone, Lu Qin is only afraid of not himself. Lu Qin cultivates the Tao and has little good and evil, which is completely opposite to the scene where the two lines of good and evil in Qin Pingan's heart were very close. Qin Pingan's mood or cognition, if the heaven and the earth have not yet opened, and a Tao heart of Lu Qin is like the world is almost infinite, it can be said that the Tao is pure Jedi heaven in another sense. Qin Pingon said, "Don't force it anyway, I will travel to the Middle Earth and Divine Continent in the future." Lu Qin smiled and said, "Your swordsmanship is mysterious, but it's much simpler than senior brother you seeking 500 spiritual officials." Qin Pingon said, "Master Lu doesn't need to remind me of the gap with him, I know better than anyone else." Lu Qin wondered, "You haven't personally experienced brother Yes Taoism and swordsmanship, how dare you tell the difference?" Qin Pingon said, "Then treat me as bragging." Lu Qin took a sip of tea and chewed the tea leaves in his mouth. Qin Pingon said, "When the body is outside, in fact there is a kind of mind in addition to the practice. After a long time of mountain climbing and practice, it is easy to forget the predecessor. Then stay at the foot of the mountain to see the scenery on the mountain." Lu Qin nodded. All habits themselves are a kind of self-inflicted forgetting. Qin Pingon raised the bowl, bumped with Lu Qin and used tea instead of wine. Just saying the words of Zhangjiao Lu, the average mountain person can't say it. Qin Pingon smiled and said, "Since I was young, every time I went out to travel, novel. I had a little habit of counting the characters mentioned in different books. Among the top 10 characters, Zhangjiao Lu can be said to be the one who rides. Juechen the 4th to 10th place, the total number is not as good as a Lu Qin." Lu Qin asked curiously, "What if you add the third?" Qin Pingon said, "It's not as good as Master Lu." Lu Qin asked again, "Add the second one?" "It's still not as good." Lu Qin praised, "It turns out that Pin Dao is so powerful." The young Taoist priest wearing a lotus crown looked up at Luopao Mountain. There is a family in Bai Yunxing. A lotus flower on the crown of the road flickered, and the heart was drawn together. Lu Qin held the bowl in one hand and tapped the table with his 2 fingers. "Don't you see, the world is like a mural, the water is the paint, the mountains are the paper, the ghosts are walking all over the wall. The spring breeze is sassy and the sword is shining. The poor people have heard the ancient sayings passed down by the immortals. The gods are divided in the four worlds. The Shuijing Palace has green tiles. Colorful battles hold high peacock fans. Goddesses dressed in baboon costumes and golden whips drive unicorn horses. Wind, the Confucian Temple on the left and the Wu Temple on the right. There is still the Qinghuang Temple in the middle. The Fuchuan in the mountain is full of brocade clothes. The aquarium is clear and the offering is sitting and it is cool. Whoever bows to the heavens, the golden bell and the jade chime reflect the sound of the mountain. Chiron drives halfway back, pillow under the plum tree white bones. Taste the clouds and mists at the bottom of the worry wall. Lift up the mountain gate and go to the sky. At this moment, someone ran from the mountain and laughed loudly. Master Lu, are you here to set up a stall again? The pretty girl who used to be in the small town with you and my brother is now married as a woman. Come on, I'll lead the way. On the other side of the city, how many beautiful girls are there now? One is old and another is new. There are only a lot more than in the past. Lu Chen let out a snort. Hearing the voice, he just felt a big head. He was about to put oil on the soles of his feet, but the man reached out and grabbed his shoulders and said with more strength, "What are you running, old friends? Brothers are united, business is booming. When you with my light, I have made a lot of money." Lu Chen had to put his back on the bench and said helplessly, "Brother Dofeng, the family doesn't talk about the two sides. As long as you squatted next to the stall in the poor road, it was really no business and it was almost blocking the way to make money. Ladies, they all came to the poor road one by one, but when they saw you they all walked around the stall. Did the poor road say a word? Is it enough brotherly loyalty?" Zheng Dafeng smiled and said, "What's the point of mentioning the past?" Lu Chen nodded, tilted his shoulders and complained, "It hurts." Qin Pingon got up with a smile. "I don't think I understand what you guys are talking about and what you're talking about." Lu Chen was anxious. "Don't, the three of us are all acquaintances. We can chat together if we want to chat." Qin Pingon sat down again and asked, "Headmaster Lu has come to Howren this time. What is he busy with?" Lu Chen smiled and said, "If Qin Shan is busy with something, he can go first. Brother Dafeng will treat him here, that's enough." Qin Pingon thought for a while. "Are you looking for a certain monk?" In fact, Fuyazu is looking for, Tonggis Hao is looking for, and Aquarius is also looking for such a potential cultivator. According to Cui Dongshan's speculation, it is the son of a Howren human woman and a cultivator of the wild demon tribe. Cui Dongshan wanted to find this person first, but it was in vain. Just like he wanted to find the little girl Yuan Shao later in the colorful world, he was destined to disappear. Although Qin Pingon was almost inexplicable, Lu Chen nodded and said worriedly, "It's very troublesome, quite troublesome. In a sense, I've actually found it twice, but I haven't been able to catch it. As for why I can't catch it, just look at the sundial in the wild world." So the Confucian temple side also has a headache. This time Pindao came to help and the Confucian temple did not stop it. Staying on Howren's side is just a hot potato. Yuli is not suitable and he can't be imprisoned. After all, the other party has not made any mistakes at present, and it is not easy to let go. If it is allowed to develop, it will only survive and not destroy itself. The natural cultivator is born, and the preservation is to pick up money on the road. You can pick up Daoshu cheats on the last trip to the mountain. If you want to quietly let a big cultivator stare as if waiting for the other party to make a mistake and then kill them, isn't it still punishable by not teaching? With poetry, benevolence, righteousness and sages, who is willing to take over such a huge cause and effect? Even if someone is willing to take over such a mess, do they really think that they can change the trajectory and change the result? If the poor guess is not wrong, in the heart of that child there was already a huge hostility towards the entire Howren world, such as seeing with his own eyes the indisputable, or even a good man's father who was beheaded by the Howren cultivator just because he took military exploits. Regardless of indiscriminate, he killed him. Even the child didn't have time to know that his father was a savage demon clan, and his mother was also affected. If the woman's appearance was any better, wouldn't those Howren cultivators not be individuals? Pindo's guess is only one of the possibilities. It's just sex. In fact, there can be countless worse situations and outcomes. His deep-rooted hostility to Howren world will, as the years go by and his ascent on the road of cultivation, make him gain more malice and savagery. The demons and monks who died here in the world, those pure malice, will continue to be passed on and superimposed on this monk in a strange way that is difficult to observe and trace, until one day, for example, when he joins the ranks, the Ascension realm will only reveal the truth. but by that time he is probably already in the wild world, standing with Fei Ran and Shouchen. It is very likely that the two worlds almost collided this time. The guy's intention is only to let this child grow up quickly in a more hidden way. Li Xing leaves Howren world once every 10 years and goes to the outer world. This person will grow up quietly if he is lucky, and the realm won't climb too fast so as not to reveal the truth. It's a good thing you didn't act impulsively, if the Xianxia and Jilin office of the Lu family in Middle-earth were destroyed. That's all, it's just a waste of money for repairs if the Lu family is destroyed. The Yinyang family's sky watchers and earth surveyors suffered heavy casualties due to a sword questioning, and there were only a few left. In addition, the head of the family, Lu Xian, was cut down and the consequences would be unimaginable. Mr. Lu, now there is a pair of men and women, they belong to heaven and earth, the Taoism is pure and flawless and the whole world is vast. Cannot be said that they are the only ones who can find the monk. There are still masters in the Confucian temple, but there are them without them, it is true, it is still very difficult the same. If the two of them met you, Mr. Mo and Miss Ye, that night, such as what is good? Isn't that a huge mess? Sword of Coming Chapter 10:13. Qin Pingon sat down again and listened to Lu Qin and Jing Dafeng talking nonsense over there. If Brother Dafeng lives in the door of the Confucian family, his Taoism is not under the two leaders of Dong and Han. You have to go to the door of the Zhongtu Confucian temple to shout such words to show your sincerity. Do you dare? Confucianism has many rules. Brother Dafeng, would you like to go to a high place in the Qingming world? Pin Dao is willing to recommend you inside and outside Baiyujing, you can choose at will. My auntie in Wuzhou, her temper is too fierce and she is a little older, I may not be able to hold her down. Chaoga has long been a Taoist companion. If I remember correctly, it seems that they have all had wedding wines. Liang Jingshan and De Chaozong are now already married. It would be inappropriate for the third party to intervene, lest Su Jun be hurt and never recover. Could it be the Yufu dynasty of Sister Zhou Xian? Or the Qingshan dynasty of the White Lotus Girl? After chatting and chatting, the two sides sat on a bench and began to whisper and whisper. I think the friendship between the two sides was quite good back then. Just as Qin Pingon was about to get up, Lu Qin hurriedly took out a tin can with dense inscriptions and signed Lin Langlu, changed the tea leaves for Shanju and Jing Dafeng, added hot water and said, try and see Kuang Lishan's tin can. Cloud tea. It took Pindao hard work to steal this amount and the price was not small. Now a tablet has been erected for Pindao at the gate of the mountain. Everyone is a cultivator. Why are they still so angry? Sisti. Qin Pingon, what are your plans next? If it happens, we can travel together for a journey of landscape and have a company so it won't be too boring. Qin Pingon changed the subject and asked, has Zhang Fenghai in Yushu City already left the Yanxia cave of Jinyue Palace? Lu Qin nodded and said, he will participate in the debate of the three religions and Bai Yujing will open his mouth to him, but this kid has a bad temper and his mind is stubborn. I don't want them all together. The two senior brothers who have always treated him as a half-son are both happy and angry. They can't find the whereabouts of junior brother Zhang Fenghai. When I got to Nanhua City, there was a big commotion. I really think Pindao is vegetarian who can't scold the street. Pindao has set up a stall in Huaihuang County for 10 years. Because Lu Qin mentioned scolding the street, Qin Pingon asked, Qing Quan? Back then in the city, Qing Quan and Zhao Gazhu, two old sword cultivators, admired the second shopkeeper very much. It had nothing to do with the level of swordsmanship. As young hidden officials from outsiders, they just happened to be completely crushed in the field they were best at. Pressed them. Lu Qin smiled and said, he and Naylan burned the reeds, and now they use the dragon resting stone in the center of the palace water as a sword refinement dojo. Yes, in the future when you go out to travel, just walk sideways in the 14 states. As for Dong Haitan and Fatty Yen, you don't have to worry about it. Taking a step back, as long as there is a criminal officer Haosu in charge, only they will bully others. Qin Pingon nodded. Lu Qin suddenly whispered, you owe Yu Xian the 300 gold and copper coins. The poor man has a small amount of savings. In his life he has never seen a friend who owes a debt. When he thinks of this he will feel uncomfortable, so he has already helped Luobao Mountain. As for our friendship, a little money, don't mention it again. Qin Pingon sneered. Lu Qin said angrily, okay, let me tell you the truth. In fact, it was the poor Taoist who talked with the old Immortal Yu, and after a lot of lip service he helped Luo Pashan to get rid of this debt. Qin Pingon smiled and said, In addition to being fond of doing things, Headmaster Lu has a great ability to do things. Lu Chen wondered, the old show has already told you about this? Qin Pingon frowned and said, what do you mean? Lu Chen's face was embarrassed, so he could only honestly explain the reason. Pin Dao left by Yujing before coming to Haoran. Pin Dao did go to the outer galaxy and had a good talk with Zhou Xian, and the old fairy took the initiative to mention 300 gold and copper coins. One thing saying that the old Shutsai sat down with him and talked about it. The Dao has a lot of benefits. He is thin-skinned compared with gold, fine and copper coins. It is nothing at all. It was just to help the old with a message. He also said that the next time Lord Qin is a guest in the Middle-earth Divine Continent, even if Zhou Xian is not in the sect, he can directly borrow 3 or 5 more. 5 or 600 gold essences from Jin Jinfeng. For copper coins, he has already greeted Jing Zong and the 2 direct disciples of Shang Zong who are in charge of the money, and then Shan Zhuchen will have the money just by opening his mouth. When talking about the 351 word, seeing that Qin Pingan's eyes seemed to be wrong, Lu Chen instantly understood and immediately changed his mouth, saying the number directly to 5 or 600. This pot, poor morality and righteousness Bo Yuntian, is willing to put a knife to his brother's side, and the poor road is just memorizing it. Lu Chen asked tentatively, 6 avatars limited by the rank of the talisman paper, seem to be in low realm, really don't need the help of the poor Daoist to protect the Dao? No talk. Qin Pingon got up to say goodbye and silently climbed the mountain alone. If Lu Chen didn't talk nonsense, Luopa Shangquan Mansion would be equivalent to 300 more gold and copper coins out of thin air. If they were all refined, although the rank of a Jingqiu flying sword could not be improved, the number of flying swords differentiated could be significant. Increase. After the trip to Yuzhou, in addition to seeing His Majesty the Emperor Dali, he did not know how much gold, fine and copper coins were left in the Dali treasury. Of course, I have to go to the Yuzhong County Logging Institute. After confirming that Lin Shi's father was not involved in the grievance that year, Qin Ping's kind of relief is not enough for outsiders. On the Qingming festival this year, Ma Kuxuan wanted to stop Yushuan in the capital so he could try it. It doesn't matter whether it will involve Shenwu Mountain or the King's Mansion of Xia Mountain in Aquarius Continent. Then in Youjiao Mountain, Qin Pingon promised Zhang Kaiqin and Hong Yonghua that he would attend the Qingxingguo viewing ceremony in the middle of the year. As for the excavation of Dadu on Tongyi's Hao, Qin Pingon has made up his mind not to ask questions, and leave it all to Cui Dongshan and Qingping Sword Sect to run in with all the forces. Previously in the outer world, Qin Pingon confirmed one thing. The Confucian Temple is indeed going to be conferred the title of the 5 sacred mountains of Aquarius Island, and the 5 mountain monarchs, including Wei Bo and Jin Qing, are about to be conferred the title of gods. As for the 3 religions debate, Qin Pingon was still hesitating whether to participate in the audition and if so whether to bring Xian Wei. The top priority, of course, is to return to the Jade Pure Realm. Afterwards he traveled with Lu Jiuxian to the vast world. Originally, the Lu family and Pei Axiang's Leigong Temple in Aizhou must visit. Now Qin Pingon is too lazy to go to the Lu family, and the relationship is not familiar to that. Just an anonymous guest. At the door, as soon as the mountain owner left, Xiao Mo and Xiego soon appeared. Lu Chen looked at the sable-cap girl. The sable-cap girl bent her 2 fingers, pointed to her eyes, and gestured to the young Taoist priest wearing a lotus crown to take care of that pair of thieves. Lu Chen said in his heart, everything is natural to rise and fall, and the old things are not as good as the new. It's just that Miss Xia wants to steal the sky and change the day, and it's not easy to get along with this in the eyes of the poor. Xiego grinned and said, it's up to people. Then Xiego said pitifully, little Amo, this Taoist priest is secretly teasing me, and he just said what he said in his heart and it's very meaty. Xing Dafeng immediately raised the white bowl. I can take Dao Chong Lu's dog's head as a guarantee, it's something Daoist Lu can do. Xiao Mo smiled, obviously not taking it seriously. Mr. Xing, don't be joking, I trust Daoist Lu. Lu Chen gave Mr. Xiao Mo a thumbs up and drank a sip of tea to suppress his shock. Besides, it's better to chant Buddha with a dirty mouth than to scold someone. Xiego sneered and said, you are a Taoist priest and you still eat fast and recite Buddha? Lu Chen nodded. When the poor road encounters difficulties and the hurdles that cannot be overcome, he must always recite the blessing of the Buddha several times in his heart, Amit Ba. Xiego was a little puzzled. The Taoist priest in front of him was the 3rd headmaster of Bai Yujing Lu Chen? Is it hard to kill? How hard is it to kill? However, Lu Chen turned his head to look at Luopao Mountain. There was a rickety old man on the mountain who was described by Pei Qian as the best cook among the cooks, and the best cook among the warriors, looking at the foot of the mountain with a smile. I don't know how far you are after you don't, and when you are drunk you forget the way you came. The world was silent, except for the faint sound of flipping books on the bamboo chair at the gate of the mountain. In the bamboo house on the first floor, Qin Pingon continued to copy books. Dozens of people such as Xiahou Zan and Liang Yuping were already standing by the Heart Lake where Lord Qin Pingon was. Their postures and expressions changed slowly like water flowing. The great cultivator looked at it intently, even if the damage of each thread of the robe fits the reason, since it is all real things that have been washed repeatedly by the long river of time, naturally there is no flaw at all. And every word they said, the words floated in the air, like a flock of birds lingering around the mountains, lingering. Luopao Mountain and Qingping Sword Sect. The upper sect has the lotus flower blessed land of Jiling Peak, and the lower sect has Chongqundongtian with Mixifeng. There is a mountain in the cave called Qisong, naturally because there are many ancient pines in the mountain. According to Cui Dongshan's explanation, it was because the previous owner was pure-hearted and had few desires and didn't like making noises, so he used a very clever method of closing the mountain, so that the mountain has not yet appeared in the mountains. Of course, this ban has been lifted by Cui Dongshan. I believe that it will not be long before the ancient pinewood spirits with enlightenment will appear one after another in the mountains. Yu Shehui and He Gu, who originally practiced swordsmanship in this mountain, are now traveling and busy with business, saying that they can do their best to excavate Dadu. Only Chai Wu, Bai Xian, King Sun Chun and Qing Chaolu were left. Chai Wu has entered the Jade Realm and is now the most idle one. It is rare for Bai Xian and the others to gather together today during their sword practice gaps. Chai Wu was aware of the party here, so he rushed over to join in the fun. Seeing the little girl with the jug in her hand, Bai Xian clasped his fists and bowed. Hey, isn't this a there Immortal? What kind of wind is blowing your old man? Come here, Ping Bai Xinghui. The younger generation has a low realm and a poor family, no wine in a humble house, poor hospitality and sins. Chef Ching, what are you doing over there? Hurry up and give us a few kowtows to that immortal chief to make amends. King Sun Chun, who was sitting on the side, glanced at Bai Xian, who was full of sour words. It was like this every time, endlessly. Thanks to Chai Wu's good temper, she was really not used to Bai Xian. In fact, Bai Xian is just unhappy in his heart and has been addicted to his mouth. To say that he is really jealous of Chai Wu, who is Uncle Bai, who is dedicated to proving the way and ascending. It's just that since Chai Wu entered the Jade Pure Realm, Bai Xian felt that he was completely unable to be a relative with the word genius in his life. After all, with Qin Li, who is known as the Little Hidden Official, Bai Xian didn't feel that the gap between the two sides was too big. As a result, Chai Wu directly jumped from the 3 realms of Qi practitioners in Lujinjing and arrived at Yupijing. What should Uncle Bai do? Could it be that he was so cruel, let Lord Yingguan cut himself a few swords and cut back from the Dongfu realm to the 3rd realm first? The problem is that even so, his Uncle Bai is just following the of the girls, Xiaomu. Isn't he still the first to lose to her in terms of momentum? Really bored, Bai Xian took out a booklet from his sleeve, put it on the table solemnly, rubbed his hands and then slowly opened the hero book. On the first page there is Qiuji, the Jiaifeng swordsman who I just met not long ago, my good brother. It's no wonder that Lord Yingguan always likes to travel far away, to walk around the rivers and lakes, and all his friends come like this. They can't fall from the sky, so they have to rely on fate to find them and make friends. Bai Xian turned his head and said, Little cook, you also learn boxing. Cheng Chaolu immediately shook his head like a rattle and said decisively, I'll forget it, the aptitude for learning boxing is too poor, and it's not enough to watch, so I won't give it up. For the sake of fellow villagers, Bai Xian continued to persuade, Little cook, why do you have to be so arrogant as a person? It's good to shout a few times by the side. Seeing the fat man, Bai Xian still shook his head. That's all. Anyway, it's not less than a Qing Chaolu who is the same as that Lian Ranfeng Baishou who has no courage and is a coward. Especially Baishou, thanks to the fact that they are all surnamed Bai, and the children of the Bai family are all heroes. Next time we meet, I have to persuade him to change the surname. The southern part of Aquarius, the northeastern border of the Yunshao dynasty, a young man with thick eyebrows and big eyes, followed by a young female crown holding a whisk, they stopped at the foot of a mountain. The female crown smiled and said, Shuijing, your friend, why did you choose such a place where spiritual energy is thin to start a school? Dong Shuijing said, he had such a personality when he was a child. He didn't like to be lively. He wished that no one knew him. He just liked to make money in silence. The masters of this mountain, one in charge and one in law, went down the mountain together to welcome the distinguished guests. On the way down the mountain, Wu Tijing jokingly said, nothing goes without going to the Three Treasures Hall. Master Hu, you have to take it easy, be careful to be deceived and return the money to the number of people. Hu Feng said, when it comes to money, Dong Shuijing is similar to you. He is not greedy and can be trusted. Hu Feng had only 1.5 friends in his life. Wu Tijing beside him counted as one, and Dong Shuijing, a fellow villager at the foot of the mountain, counted as half. Wu Tijing raised his chin. The Taoist nun beside Dong Shuijing looks good. Hu Feng said, no surprise, it is the current palace master of Lingfei Palace. Sure enough, after the two sides met, Dong Shuijing introduced the female crown of the companion, Huang Li, the current palace owner of Lingfei Palace, with the Taoist name Dong Ting. It used to be the Lingfei view of the old Baishuang dynasty, but the capital was smashed by the Dali cavalry all the way south and the kingdom was cut off, and now it has become the Yunxiao dynasty with a slightly smaller territory. Not long ago the Lingfei temple was also elevated to the palace from the Guan, but it was not within the territory of the Yunxiao dynasty. Or it is precisely because of the existence of this Taoist temple and her role as the protector of the country, otherwise the Yunxiao dynasty could completely annex this small country. It is rumored that this Jade Pure Realm female crown is very good at Qingzhang. Congratulations, repairs Liujiao on the road, can invite gods to the truth, use all ghosts and driving soldiers. She opened up an ancient battlefield with a large number of Yin soldiers on the border between the two countries outside the palace. As her second dojo, it is now very powerful and the Yunxiao dynasty is a headache for this. Dong Shuijing's first business partner was actually Hu Feng. On the boundary between the old Longzhou and the new Chuzhou, Dong Shuijing was nicknamed Dong Bancheng. Hu Feng was able to make a fortune thanks to a lot of credit. When they met, Dong Shuijing didn't give any polite greetings and went straight to the topic. Hu Feng, do you still remember the amount of the principal you gave me and our agreement on splitting the accounts at that time? Hu Feng nodded. Born in poverty, he is not the kind of master who is generous and cannot take money as money. Therefore, although Hu Feng was not particularly concerned about the money, he must remember the accounts clearly and was too lazy to rush it. Two groups of people climbing together chatting while walking. At that time Hu Feng picked up 8 snake gallstones of excellent quality in the Longxi River, and sold them to an old man in Li Shi and Taoye Lane on Fulu Street. Although Hu Feng was young, he was a veteran. Half points, no offense on both sides, and got 2 big stacks of silver notes. After that Hu Feng only spent a small amount of money to buy a whole street of mansions in Zhouqing, and obtained more than 30 land deeds for the delivery of yamen houses. At that time the mansion in Zhouqing was still an extremely low value. The price, coupled with the intention of the Dali court to fill the old Longzhou from several places in Hongzhou and Yunzhou, in order to encourage the rich and common people from other states to immigrate to this place, many of the policies of the Longzhou government are uniquely beneficial to the people. Hu Feng handed over the rest of the house to Dong Shuijing to take care of it, and it was considered an occupation. In addition, because he often followed his grandfather on the streets when he was young, Hu Feng collected a lot of junk, mostly copper. Mirrors, ancient coins and other inconspicuous objects, these are all handed over to Dong Shuijing to help sell them, selling high and selling low. Hu Feng did not ask. Anyway, Dong Shuijing is only doing business, it doesn't matter if he loses all if he earns it later, both parties dividends. When Dong Shuijing sold these junk goods at a high price and converted them into snow money, Hu Feng's 2 immortal money accounted for almost 30% of Dong Shuijing's wealth. Dong Shuijing said with a smile, there are 2 ways now. First, we will break up the partnership and you will take back the principal and dividends. Second, keep the principal and collect the first dividends first, and then I will send them to your door every year. Come, it's too troublesome. 10 years, Ajazi, it's okay. Hu Feng said without hesitation. Second, dividends can be distributed once every 10 years. Wu Tijing asked casually, if sect master who chooses the first method, how many pieces of Guyu money can he get? Hu Feng was also a little curious. Dozens? A little less. 100 hundreds. Anyway, as long as there are more than 100 pieces of Guyu money, then Pai can easily get through the current difficulties. Dong Shuijing reported a number with a smile. 2,200 grain rain money. Hu Feng mistakenly thought that he had heard it wrong. Wu Tijing has only one feeling: is it such an easy thing to make money? Brother Dong, take me with you later? Dong Shuijing has a square-inch object in his sleeve which is a folding fan. There are 200 grain rain coins in it. As for this square-inch object, it should be a congratulations to Hu Zhongmen and Wu Zhonglu for establishing a sect. There is no restriction on this fan. It opens the door when you open it. The fan has good karma and the homophonic sound has good karma, so it is a good omen, and I hope that the cooperation between our two sides can be smooth and long-lasting. Hu Feng was not pretentious and just accepted the folding fan. Wu Tijing's impression of Dong Shuijing was a little better, and he was indeed a cheerful person. Hu Feng made a rare joke. If I knew I could make such money, I wouldn't have spent the money to buy those state town houses. Dong Shuijing teased. According to the current split, you almost spent a piece of grain rain money as snow. Speaking of this, Dong Shuijing gave a thumbs up. As expected of the person in charge, he was full of splendor when he was young. Dong Shuijing asked, Hu Feng, would you like to sell those broken pieces of porcelain you picked up in Laosi Mountain? Hu Feng shook his head. Then Hu Feng added with a smile, if you talk about this first and don't mention dividends, I'll bite my teeth and sell it. Dong Shuijing said with a smile, it may be this way of doing business with others. I won't play with you in these vain tricks. Friendship with fellow villagers, I still need to talk about it. Hu Feng also laughed. The friendship of fellow villagers, many people may find it funny, but Hu Feng does not. Dong Shuijing really cared, and Hu Feng also took it seriously. Dong Shuijing said straightly, then we will discuss another matter. I want to buy that cicada cave sky with you. Although it has been missing for a long time, this cave has always been one of the 36 small caves. Hu Feng shook his head. As for how Dong Shuijing knew that this cave was in his hands, Hu Feng was reluctant to ask more, and he believed that Dong Shuijing was not malicious. There are always some people who seem to be born to be trusted by others. In fact, Hu Feng treats Dong Shuijing like this, and Dong Shuijing and Wu Tijing also treat him like Hu Feng. Otherwise, ordinary Qi practitioners would have become suspicious long ago. As for Yamazawa Yeshio, it is estimated that he has already begun to figure out people. Wu Tijing glanced at the female crown beside Dong Shuijing. Huang Li and the young Jianxiu smiled in return. Dong Shuijing said with a smile, don't be in a hurry to refuse, first listen to my offer conditions. First, I offer 10,000 grain rain money to buy Xianxia Dongshan. Second, to be precise, I only bought the ownership of Xianxia Dongtian with you. Within 600 years I will not interfere with your right to use it. Even if you have emptied the heaven and earth treasures in the cave, I don't care. There is no problem with the remaining empty shell. After 600 years I will take back this cave. Of course, if you think the deadline is too short, you can talk about it again 800 years. Thirdly, of course I don't have so much cash. 10,000 grains of grain rain is not a small amount after all. So I will pay in 3 installments. The first one, 3,000 grains of grain rain, can be given to you now. The second one, 100 years later, 4,000 pieces. The third payment after 300 years will be paid in full. These 400 years will be regarded as my overdue payment, and the interest will be calculated separately. How about that? Wu Tijing was amazed, no longer taking money seriously. He was also shocked by Dong Shuijing's generosity. He couldn't help but hit Hu Feng in the ribs. Wu Tijing didn't bother to speak in his heart and said bluntly, Hu Feng, I think we can talk. Not to mention 800 years, 600 years, just relying on the cultivating qualifications of himself and Hu Feng. Even if the sword Immortal remains are not moved, can the sword intent still not be mastered? Hu Feng shook his head and said, don't talk about that. Dong Shuijing also didn't want to force others to be difficult and said with a smile, it's okay, I changed my mind one day, remember to find me first, you can always agree? Hu Feng nodded and said, this is no problem. Before the group reached the 2 adjacent thatched huts halfway up the mountain, Dong Shuijing stopped and said goodbye. Go back, Palace Master Huang still has a lot of business to deal with. Hu Feng, to be honest, I don't see it. Even people like me who are not very particular think that your sect is too shabby, and say that the wonton shop I used to be may be a bit better than yours. Hu Feng said with a smile, the next time you come here it will definitely be different. After talking about things, Dong Shuijing took a sip of water and went down the mountain with the female crown Huang Li. When she reached the foot of the mountain, she sacrificed a talisman boat and rode away in the clouds. Can be said that it came and went in a hurry and it was resolute. Wu Tijing has always seldom recognized someone. This Dong Shuijing is a kind person. Hu Feng nodded. My grandfather once said that shrewdness, intelligence and wisdom are 3 different realms. He also said that a person born with wisdom roots is easy to be affected by the mundane world. But as long as they have wisdom roots, they can be more. It's easy to change your mind and turn back. When my grandfather went to Lao Sishan to find me, he saw Dong Shuijing's face at first sight, and said that he looked old at the age of 3, and he would definitely be a man with money in the future. If you make a lot of money, you can keep it. In fact, Dong Shuijing stopped studying for a long time, and made his fortune by opening wonton shops and selling glutinous rice wine. Before that, I persuaded him to stay with Mr. Qi to study, but Dong Shuijing was very determined. He said that he couldn't read Lin Shi anyway, so he might as well make money earlier. Wu Tijing smiled and said, it can be seen that the Huang Li of Lingfei Palace is very polite to Dong Shuijing. As the direct disciple of Xianjun Chaorong, she inherited Lingfei Palace. According to the pedigree of Taoism, she is the second disciple of Bai Yujing's 3 palms to teach Lu Qin. It is possible to make such a Daoist fairy who needs to be backed by mountains and mountains, and has realm and realm, accompany him to climb the mountain as if she is a squire. This shows that Dong Shuijing is really developed. The sea of clouds is surging, and on the talisman boat, the female crown asked with a smile, Shuijing, don't you really want to go to the Qingyao Peak Jingxian nunnery with me? Dong Shuijing shook his head and said, I'm going to Miao Mountain. Credit men are busy. People are busy. In the territory of Daliu Prefecture by the Jingxi River, there is an incense burner that can only be regarded as an ordinary ancient temple. Although it is an ancient temple for thousands of years, it belongs to the lineage of the law school, which is the most disciplined in Buddhism. Even on the 15th day of the new year, pilgrims are still not many. This is still in recent years when the Dali court began to build temples and promote Buddhism in various places. Presumably before this, the temples were really in a bleak situation. But if it is in the Middle-earth Shenzhou or the Luxiazu where Buddhism is prosperous, it is conceivable that this temple is known as the first mountain of the Aquarius Law School of Buddhism, and the incense is flourishing. I remember that when I was young I went into the mountains with Master Yao to find suitable porcelain clay. An elderly scholar with white hair on the temples, who looks like a rare age and has a clean appearance, lived here for many days, and often asked the great monk to teach about the law, especially the quarter law. It is said that the founder of this temple once served as the upper seat of a famous temple in China's Shenzhou, and also participated in the translation field of a Sanzang master. Previously, Qin Pingon reigned in his mind and returned to his position. This layman did not want to be revealed in the temple, so he immediately performed the escape method, and found a cave in the mountains to slew the cicada, into a paper talisman. Return to the temple, pass the mountain gate, enter the guest room, light the lamp and copy the scriptures. At noon today the clouds are dense, the sky will rain heavily and the day will be as dark as night. A scholar in a Confucian shirt with a wooden hairpin on his head, sat on a futon in the corridor, holding a string of rosary beads and gently twisting the beads. After coming to this ancient temple for several months, the scribes were not accompanied by book boys or servants. They only brought a few salutes, clothes and books, and everything was kept simple. There are quite a lot of books in the temple, but half of them are ruined and there are many insects. There is a small pond in front of the Daxiong Palace, in which there are dozens of golden carp and crucian carp with brilliant scales. According to the records of the mountain records in history, there were Xianjun Iran who held several small dragons in the pond. All of them were more than a foot long with 4 claws on the head of a snake. There were nearby pilgrims from young to ancient times. Every time they came to the temple to burn incense, they would see a few looking at the pool. I didn't see any signs of growing old and dying. It is rumored that there were thieves from other places who had heard the wind several times, sneaked into the temple at night, captured the little dragons and put them in the water bottle, carried them away, all escaped halfway and returned to the temple pool on their own. The water bottle was sealed. It's a pity that after a heavy rain, the little dragons all flew into the sky with the clouds and disappeared. Now the golden carp and golden crucian carp in the water are said to have been infused with dragon energy, so they turned from blue and black to golden at first. They listened to Sanskrit for a long time. Morning bells and twilight drums. Here I hear Taoism in practice and ask to turn around. The scholar in Russian is a great pilgrim, a monk in the temple. I saw him speak well before and he has a pure accent in the capital. I suspect that this person is a dignitary and he often takes the initiative to talk and attack. Later, the scholar explained that he was not from an official family. Over time the monks respected him. The color gradually faded and the arrogance turned thick. There is a novice who is sure that this person is a big businessman. He often asks about many foreign countries, states and counties. He often invites scribes to climb the mountain and enjoy the scenery. Because of another cliff on the top of the mountain, white clouds often rise, and the clouds are extremely wide and condensed like a jade fat, like the sea of snow. Only the mountains stand. The little novice only needs to knock on the window and say the word cloud rising, and the scribes will put on straw sandals and hold 2 sticks made of mangosteen roots after excavation. Surrounding the mountains. When climbing the mountain, you don't know whether the mountain rises into the clouds or the clouds meet the mountains. There is a clean and cold spring on the side of the temple, and the mountain monks use a long tube of green bamboo to introduce it into the kitchen room to make tea sweet. At that time the old scribe lived here for a long time, copied scriptures every day and carried an ancient inkstone with him. There is an imperial tablet pavilion on the back mountain, which was erected by the previous emperor for the Empress Dowager's blessing. There are still dozens of stone tablets next to the pavilion. Most of them are local officials praying for rain. A few acres and so on. In the territory of Yuzhou, there are different days for hundreds of miles. Since ancient times there has been a vision of thunder on a sunny day at noon. Moreover, the water and air are blocked by the mountains. If 2 soldiers meet, the battlefield will face each other. Therefore there are many torrential rains in the ancient temples in the mountains, and the momentum is astonishing. Going to the ravine is in a hurry, often as short as a cup of tea, as long as a meal, and you can see the sun again. The natives all say that there is a hidden dragon descending into the human world, trailing its tail across this mountain. Historically, this ancient temple has suffered many disasters and lightning strikes, and has been destroyed and rebuilt again and again. There was a night-watching monk who witnessed a strange scene. Electric fire was intertwined, entering through the window and shining brightly up the eaves. The sky fire burned the gold powder Buddha face of the statue in the house. After the fire was turned off, the Buddha statue's face was like tears, but the pillars and windows of the hall were not damaged. There was also a Buddha statue riding a lion. When the current abbot and monk are stationed here in Sisi, he begins to teach the FA in the ascended seat. Soon after that, whenever there is thunder and lightning at night, the top of a tower will bloom golden, and if the meteors are scattered. But there are no strange visions anywhere else. The temple is full of incense for a while, and there is an endless stream of good men and women who are willing to bypass many Taoist temples and temples to worship incense here. I never thought that this monk was a monk and a pilgrim, and explained in detail how the owl tail on the roof that he drew and repaired was able to prevent lightning strikes and skyfire, and why the spire in the temple was plated with a layer of gold and silver, and what is the material of the tower core column that goes directly to the ground. Why is it called Lei Gongzhu in ancient books, and what is the purpose of building the dragon cave underground? In short, according to the old monk, there is actually no so mysterious. It has nothing to do with ghosts and auspiciousness. After that, inside and outside the temple, whether it was a half-understood or a complete understanding, they all felt that the lightning strikes the sky again as if it was meaningless. Ancient and bizarre. If you can see through it, you will not be surprised. If you see through it, it will be worthless. It's just that the old monk did this, which directly caused the incense that was getting better to be left out again. For this reason, the monks in the temple are not without complaints, but the old monk is the abbot appointed by the Dali court. This layman Chen, who was borrowing in the temple, also asked curiously why the great monk was so superfluous. The old monk's explanation is also very simple. Buddhism should not be shown as miraculous. If it was more straightforward and ugly, it is estimated that the sentence bewitching people would be directly dropped. The layman asked curiously, Buddhism has magical powers, isn't it a convenient method? The old monk said with a smile, after all, it's just a convenient method, not the only method. The white-haired scholar nodded and said, good. Since the lay monks also believe in Buddhism, the poor monk has a question. Please ask the great monk. Do you think Buddhism is world-weary? When the Tathagata speaks of the world, it is not the world but the world. The layman was silent for a moment, and after giving these 3 sentences for courage and reassurance, if it is limited to the world we live in, the Dharma is naturally world-weary. The old monk nodded lightly and left with a smile. The rain was coming and the scribe stood up and saluted. An old monk stopped to pay his respects and walked into the corridor. The old monk smiled and said, "So it turns out that Layman Chen is a cultivator, and he cultivates the thunder method?" The scribe nodded and said, "I don't dare to say that when you enter the room, you only understand a little bit of fur. There are many records of strange novels. Thunder and fire melt the sword without burning the scabbard. It is recorded in Paya. Yin and yang are stimulated, their light is electricity, their sound is thunder, and each sound is one breath." The old monk smiled and said, "If Lei Chen came here for cultivation, whether it's to attract lightning or refine things, wouldn't Lei Chen have to go all the way in vain? After all, the temple now has only lightning protection and no lightning. Historically, there were warrior monks in this temple who practiced supernatural powers, made Vajra eyes, and went out to subdue demons and exorcise demons. For this purpose, the temple opened a special room for attracting thunder, with 100 refined knives and swords in wooden sheaths. Whenever lightning strikes, the swords often disappear. It melts into water in the sheath and the scabbard is still intact. In addition, there are all kinds of gold-plated and silver-inlaid lacquerware. All the gold and silver on the top are melted and flowed into many specially set utensils. This way it melts into water and then condenses, reforging it into a brand new sword with the secret technique of smelting on the mountain, or smelting it and using it as a talisman. Cinnabar, which can be used as a talisman, can deter ghosts and evil spirits. The scribe shook his head and said, "I just came here to ask the abbot for Buddhist teachings." The old monk asked, "Of the 84,000 schools of Buddhism, only the law school is the most ascetic. Qin Jushi is not a Buddhist, why is he only interested in our law school?" The Vinaya can be said to be strict in precepts, and the practice of keeping the precepts is recognized as the most painful. It's difficult first, then easy and difficult. Besides, I don't dare to lie to the great monk. I just practice asceticism in the temple. After leaving the temple gate, there are other ways of practicing. Hearing this, the old monk nodded and said, "I have worshipped the incense here and worshipped the Buddha, and when I left the mountain gate, it is also a practice." The scribe asked, "Every living being has karmic obstacles, how can we teach the doctrine of karma?" The old monk smiled and said, "As for cause and effect, the ancient sages don't have to believe it, the stubborn and foolish people won't believe it, the clever and villain can't believe it, and the middle-aged people can't believe it. It's better to believe it if you have it or not." After the lightning and thunder in the sky, it suddenly rained heavily like a hole in a huge lake hanging from the sky, and the water poured into the world wantonly. The old monk sat cross-legged and closed his eyes. The scribe gently twisted the rosary beads. The sound of the eaves is like a waterfall and the rain curtain is like a curtain. The water was deep and silent and the rain did not last long. At the beginning of the rain, the sun is warm and the wind is warm, and the green hills are dripping with rain. The old monk opened his eyes and said with a soft smile, "The peaches and plums in the city are troubled by wind and rain." Qin Pingon smiled knowingly and nodded, "Spring is in Shito Shepherd's purse." In the southern boundary of Aquarius Island, Qin Pingon did not travel much. Except for the last time he walked a mountain and water journey with Senior Song. Every time he went south, Qin Pingon took a ferry to the old dragon city. He had previously promised Zhang Kaiqin and Hong Yonghua of Qingxingfang that they would go to Qingxingwo to attend the crowning ceremony of the prince. The Lu clan of Qingxing Kingdom, because it is located south of Chidu, broke away from the status of a vassal state of Dali and reorganized the old mountains and rivers. The Emperor Lu clan is not young now and he is almost old. Qingxingyu, but for some unknown reason, Emperor Lu made his youngest son as the heir of a country, and made an exception to hold an external ceremony for the young prince, which was also a kind of paving way. The new national teacher is Hong Yongba's old friend on the mountain, and the owner of Qingfufang, a female swordsman Zhang Kaiqin, belongs to a family that is not in Qingxing country, but in Meiji country, which is farther south. The Zhang clan of Tianchao County in Meiji country, in the former central and southern part of Aquarius Island, was a well-established immortal clan, but the Zhang clan's reputation in the mountains was greater than that of the people. An avatar of Qin Pingon who had previously stayed at the Xianxia Inn that Zhang opened in the capital of Qingxing country. A Xianxia Inn Shanshui Dibao must give priority to providing strange people and strange things about Xianfu in his country, and it is similar to Qingxing country. Small countries often invite literary leaders to write or to comment on the characters of Zongfu, or to scold a few neighboring countries. It will also transcribe the chess records between the national players, and there are also love and hatred between certain fairies and so-and-so Jianyan. In short, there are various kinds of content. After Wuxia dissipated her beauty, the full moon shook gold again. A dumb-looking boy with a sword on his back walked alone in the moonlit night in the wilderness. With the moonlight and unusual eyesight, the boy was flipping through a military book. This is a scribbled battlefield site. In the early years, the Qingxing Kingdom's court held a land and water dharma meeting, and the money allocated by the Ministry of Household was deducted layer by layer, 80,000 taels of silver, and in the end it was actually used here, probably less than 8,000 taels. Regardless of the sky or the earth, the imperial court can't control it if it wants to, and the monks will suffer a big loss if they manage it. Therefore, the gods of lewd temples, mountain spirits, water monsters, ferocious ghosts, evil spirits, and evil spirits all gathered in this radius of thousands of miles. It seems that the Zhang clan of Tianchao County secretly dispatched a group of Zhang clan's children, but they returned with a lot of damage, which made this place gather more vicious people who came to hear the news. The sword-backed boy who stepped on a pair of straw sandals walked to the foot of a lonely mountain, closed the book, put it in his sleeve and started climbing alone along a sheep-gut path. The world has always been wide and the spring on earth can be seen calmly. It's just that from this mountaintop the surrounding heaven and earth are full of miasma and sorrowful scenes. As far as the eye can see the wasteland in the distance, the white fog is vast and there are two peaks, one high and one low, which are vaguely visible. There are two fireflies in the mountain, most of which are mansions in the mountains brightly lit. Going to the ground above the two hills, there is a red silk thread moving slowly. There is probably a team hurrying on the road. It is mighty, lighting torches and hanging red lanterns. After the sword-backed boy walked into a flat stone hill on the top of the mountain, there were already travelers who stopped here early, set up a fire, a large pot boiling water, and all kinds of water that looked like livestock viscera were tumbling in the pot. A thin figure with his back turned to the boy was squatting on the ground, holding a spoon in his hand, tasted the soup, shook his head, picked up the bottles and jars at his feet and poured them into it. There was also a woman with an oil paper umbrella on her shoulders, facing out of the cliff with no face. The closest to the young man was a pale and colorless young man, like a weak and sickly seedling. They were completely unaware of the arrival of the young man, and had no intention of saying hello. Not long after, four porters came carrying a simple sedan chair, and they chanted their horns softly. On the bamboo sedan chair sat a middle-aged scribe in a crane cloak. After getting off the sedan chair, the four strong porters stayed on the spot, their eyes blank. The scribe was wearing a sapphire scythe around his waist, and hung various official seals and military talismans. Scribe he cloak caught a glimpse of the handsome young man with an unfamiliar face, so he was a little surprised, hesitated and said hoarsely, "This little brother is a master of art and bold, not afraid of miasma or bad luck, entering this place by mistake, or is it someone who is in the same path as us, rushing to the beautiful blessing of Hehuan Mountain?" I never thought that the boy was a master with a very bad temper. Hearing that, he only said one word, "Go away." The scribe was deflated and smiled casually. Now the young men, one by one, are not too talented and not too short-tempered. The salesman laughed out loud, not sure if it was alarmist or if he had no intentions. If it wasn't for the children of the Zhang family in Tianchao County, then you really can't think about it at such a young age. If you dare to talk to our palace master by like this, you are thinking of dying early. Early abortion? The scribe in Hechuang quickly waved his hand. "Don't be afraid, little brother, don't listen to this ill-mannered child's nonsense. You can't believe it. Whoever believes it will die." The young man took out a copper coin from his sleeve, narrowed his eyes, raised the copper coin, and looked through the hole to look at the scribe in the crane cloak. The schadenfreude was a little gloating and he laughed and said, "Palace Master Bai, have you revealed yourself? I didn't expect this little brother to have such a skill, right?" The scribe he cloak smiled and said, "When you go out, travel through mountains and rivers, who hasn't ordered three-legged cat kung fu or you won't live long. Good words are hard to persuade to find a dead ghost." If this young man who doesn't know his identity for the time being thinks that businessman is a good person, he will die. The merchant said with a smile. Young man, since he has this method, don't look at what the ingredients are cooked in this pot. And the girl holding the umbrella, does she look good? The woman with her back to the crowd twisted the umbrella handle, and the oil paper umbrella spun gently. The boy with the sword on his back said, they have no intention of killing me. What are you looking at? Are you provocative? The trader snorted. I never thought that I was someone who knew the rules of the rivers and lakes. In this way they are definitely not the children of the Zhang clan in Xianxia County. They are all immortal descendants with eyes above the top. Scholar He Cloak nodded. I was startled. I almost thought it was a disciple of the Zhang family, or the immortal master of the genealogy of the Jinke faction. I was full and wanted to come here to help the heavens. The man who was waiting for a pot of belly to boil said in a low voice, what are you afraid of? Didn't Tianchao Zhang get a dirty look here? Hey, the broken-hearted person remembers the broken-hearted person. He Cloak scribe sighed and said, in order to force the Zhang clan of Tianchao back, Hehuan Mountain is also severely damaged. I have a friend who is a messenger in the mountain god's mansion. The boy asked, what kind of blessings are there over Hehuan Mountain? The scribe He Cloak laughed and said, good boy, it turns out that he is a fellow of the same road. As soon as I heard this I was excited. The boy's face was gloomy. Be careful when you speak or the dog will eat the bastard. The crane cloak scribe obviously did not understand this half-sentence. The businessman who traveled from south to north couldn't help laughing. The dog eats the and can't find his head. Scribe He Cloak hesitated for a moment, but still held back and did not make a move, rubbed his hands and smiled. There are a lot of adults. The prime minister of this government can hold a boat in his stomach so he won't get angry with you, a reckless teenager. I don't know if the young man is an unsophisticated stunned young man or an expert who really relies on it. Anyway, his words are really unpleasant. Just rely on you, the young master will blow thee in your crotch with one kick. Oh, you're a skeleton, no eggs. The man squatting on the edge of the pot directly stretched out his hand to pick up a bunch of intestines from the frying pan, raised his head and put it in his mouth, turned his head, his mouth was full of oil stains, and pulled the corners of his mouth towards the scribe Hechuang and said vaguely, Palace Master Bai, put it on the table. I can't bear it anymore. I have to play tricks with this outsider and see Xinjiang under my hands. If it is Tianchao Zhang's or Jink's spy sent here to inquire about the news, then Palace Master Bai only needs to throw the body to Hehuan Mountain. A great achievement, isn't it a betrothal gift? The woman holding the umbrella turned around and turned out to be a headless person. The young man frowned slightly, cupped his hands and said, Girl, I'm sorry, I'm unintentional. The headless woman raised her hand, covered her mouth with a coquettish smile, and lightly shook her shoulders, probably indicating that it was okay. The man chewed his intestines and asked, Young man, what a great name. If you don't change your name, don't change your surname, call Chen Ren. Isn't it a little bit to get the name young hero, eh? Kill yourself. I feel good. Since it's not a genealogy cultivator, what are you doing here in a place where birds don't shit? Make a sightseeing tour. The man was taken aback. The trader sat on the pole with his arms around his chest. Since it's Yamazawa Yeshio, do you want to find a backer here? Crane Cloak Literati smiled and said, It's not a sword cultivator but carrying a sword, is it a martial arts style? The young man stared at the so-called palace master Bai. House master? What kind of lewd temple in a small country dares to open the mansion on its own, not afraid of being struck by lightning? Oh, Xiaoxier has to poop, be careful. Any fart after flowering is a crotch. Not only the crane cloak scribe, but also the others were completely stunned by the young man's words. Walking on the rivers and lakes, this is not good, right? The merchant said in his heart. Everyone take it easy, I heard a gossip not long ago that Tianchao Zhang has a female sword immortal hidden very deeply and only emerged a few years ago. She also has a personal squire, qualified. It's amazing. I don't know the exact age. Anyway, looking at the young man, he is also a sword immortal in the fifth realm. The Jinke faction, where the national teacher of the Xing kingdom is located, joined forces, or the two sword immortals came together. The sword-carrying boy in front of him who speaks like he has eaten firecrackers, not the Zhang clan's squire. There are very few people in the world who are not afraid of sword cultivation. In particular, Yamazawa Yeshio and the ghosts and monsters, as long as they have touched Jianxiu regardless of the level of the opponent, even if they are in bad luck, as long as the opponent does not hurt the killer, they can run away if they can and hide if they can. The scribe he cloak was awe-inspiring and complained, "Sherhu, you didn't say it earlier." The merchant smiled and said, "Bimao, you didn't ask earlier." He cloak scholar asked, "Sherhu, you are well informed. I just wanted to say something to you this time. I heard that one of the dowries for the daughter of the mountain on the Hahuan mountain has a military book. Is the information accurate?" The trader held out his hand. "Old rules." Crane cloak scribe took out 2 snows from his sleeve to spend money and threw them to the merchant. The trader threw the snow money straight into his mouth and chewed it on the spot. A few strands of snow-white aura escaped from the corners of his mouth. He stretched out his hand and caught it all and patted it into his mouth again. There seemed to be some residue left. All inhaled into the mouth, his face is full of intoxication. The man who originally seemed to be sick, his pale face turned ruddy at a speed visible to the naked eye. Bai Mao said in a deep voice, "Have enough to eat and drink, can we talk now?" Sherhu laughed heartily and said, "It is certain that there is such a military book, but it is difficult to say whether it is high or low, and there is a guess that it is a magic weapon. Bai Mao, you said that you are a dead bone in a tomb and you did not lead soldiers to fight in your lifetime. The military commander is a pitiful idiot who was beheaded by his boss for his dereliction of duty, just a small magistrate. What is the use of this military book? Wipe your ass." Bai Mao closed the crane's cloak and said coldly, "Don't worry about it. Birds have their own ways and snakes have their own ways. You and I have no grievances or enmity, just go your own way." Sherhu nodded and said, "Let's go our separate ways and cooperate when we have the chance." A strong wind blew past the top of the mountain, and the boy's sleeves rattled and the long sword on his back, the hilt of the sword exposed from the sheath, swayed slightly, making a small sound. The young man hurriedly moved to the side and stood against the wind. The woman holding the umbrella raised her arms to support her forehead. "You said that you are a pure warrior with only 4 realms. What are you doing here on the top of the mountain? Come, see the scenery, just go." These suspicious people busy attending the wedding banquet in Hahuan Mountain mistakenly think that you are a stubborn stubble, and most likely will not stop you from going down the mountain. What's more, Bai Mao just deliberately opened his mouth to provoke you, and then pretended to be jealous of you and didn't want to take action. In fact, he was blocking disaster for you. Still ignorant of the stakes, the sword-carrying youth still said to himself, "That day the children of the Zhang clan in Chao County and the Immortal master of the Jin K faction are all amazing? Tell me the story." Probably because he sent 2 snows to spend money, Palace Master Bai was in a bad mood and sneered, "The 2 clansmen and direct descendants are all unattainable figures in the sky. You are a crappy fake sword cultivator. Don't be embarrassed here, get out of here, go slow, the palace master will make you a porter." At the same time, Bai Mao said in his heart, "Chen Ren, get out of here quickly." Seeing the suspicious look on the young man's face, the scribe in Hechuang immediately said in a hurry, "Young man, this guy and the man with the pot are in the same group. Do you really think the water boiled in the pot is the internal organs of livestock? Hurry up. Go. You idiot, do you really think that people are better than ghosts in this lawless ghost world? Those 2 snows cost money. Well, you can't escape, pay me back in the next life. As long as they join forces, I am doomed if you can't fight it, there's no reason to take your life for a fool like you." The guy stood up and said, "Chinren, although before tonight we have never been masked, but as a senior in Jianghu I am going to tell you something heartfelt." He cloak scribe sighed, hesitated again and again, but still didn't plan to shoot. "This is the mantra of the stone pot." He said that he would dig his heart out. The young man with the sword on his back simply stretched his hand around, took off the hilt that was glued to the scabbard with peach glue, put it into his sleeve and said with a smile, "Your name is Dendrobium? Be careful, don't kill yourself, I am an immortal." Swordsmanship. As a result, the boy was carrying an empty scabbard. That headless female ghost sighed faintly, and she was so arrogant when she was about to die, "Then I won't save this young man. If I save this time, it depends on the young man's behavior that doesn't shed tears without seeing the coffin. How long can a world that eats ghosts live?" It's just that she was inevitably puzzled. How did she come all the way to this hinterland? For some reason, the man's face changed dramatically, and just as he was about to speak, a strange phenomenon appeared outside the mountain, and the treasures were shining brightly. In a blink of an eye, they came to the top of the mountain from a dozen miles away and saw the pair of young girls, a pair of beautiful people, the former carrying a sword, holding a whip, riding a snow-white horse, and the latter riding a wan. A handsome young man with a sword and a pearl robe, chasing the wind with a purple whip. Behind them was a burly man with a naked upper body and bright red tattoos all over his body. Flying through the air, galloping with lightning speed, followed by the two people in front. The three fell to the ground, and the white horse and Qinghuan each turned into a talisman, which was twisted by the boy and girl at their fingertips, and then put into their arms. Just relying on this family property, the scribe he cloak was envious and coveted, but he did not forget to stagger his figure, and tried his best to stay away from these chi cultivators. The girl's eyes were sharp and she said, "How do you say it?" The brawny man glanced at the scribe in the crane cloak. A ghost with a career and no sins. After his death, he was obsessed with obsessions and set up a prostitution temple, but he couldn't become a heroic spirit in one place. Turning his eyes to the boy with the sword on his back, a living person seems to be a warrior. Looking at the woman holding the umbrella again, headless ghost at noon on the autumnal equinox, died of an executioner who was full of yang energy. Finally he looked at the frying pan and the man. Chi practitioners, like cannibals, do a lot of evil and are not as good as those ghosts in the mountains. The young man sneered, "Then cut it." The sword light flashed and a human head rolled down, just fell into the oil pan, and a head thumped up and down in the boiling water. The girl's face was full of disgust, and a dazzling golden light burst out from her sleeves, shattering the frying pan and her head. Accompanied by a ring of bells, the golden light swirled and returned to the girl's sleeve, carrying a long-lasting golden firefly in the air. The strong man looked at the sick man again. "He's a traitor, he's all the way, and he's still a monster who has been refined into a human form." The girl looked bright and asked, "But the remnants of the wild?" The strong man shook his head and said, "The native demon clan." The girl looked a little regretful, and there was no merit in the battle. The young man smiled and said, "Behead again." The merchant picked up the cargo load with one foot, smashed it at the boy and jumped out of the cliff again, but was still stabbed in the back vest by an arc of sword light. The sword light rose again and cut off his head. A slap the size of a strong man's fan swung out and casually beat the peddler into powder. The young man sneered, "I want to hide the tricks of the worms." The girl took off a string of golden bells around her waist and shook it gently, and a wisp of black smoke from the cliff slammed into the air, turning into hundreds of sheets of white paper. Yu Wan Yu Ing Chiao Huai smashed the white paper into pieces, and the strong man opened his mouth again and took a breath, then condensed the scattered demon blood into a bead, and swallowed it together with the demon pill in his belly. For a while there was only the sound of the wind on the top of the mountain. The umbrella girl ghost also stood up, hesitated for a while. She still chose to stand beside the sword-backed boy. He cloak scribe swallowed. Since the other party didn't drive people down the mountain, he planned to ask for mercy. This girl's film is obviously a direct immortal master from Jin Kei Xinfu, so it is qualified to have a Zhu Bing general as a squire. As for the young man, let alone he is clearly a sword immortal. This is the second time in this life that Palace Master Bai has seen sword immortal. It was still the ignorant young man with a sword on his back, who was the first to speak to break the silence, put his hands behind his back, looked at the young man who looked like his peers, nodded his head, with a look of admiration from seniors looking at juniors, and said solemnly, "I never thought that I could meet a fellow man in such a ghost place." He cloak scribe standing at the back, was completely stunned by this young man named Chen Ren. "You kid is really shameless, don't shake your hands when you have the ability to talk big." Fortunately, the young Xianxia didn't pay any attention to this brainless person. The girl asked softly, "When did Sister Zhang come? Are you meeting us at Hahuan Mountain?" "With a few of us, can we go all the way from the foot of the mountain to the two mountain mansions?" The boy frowned and said, "My master may not come, so this outing experience must be conceded." The girl's face seemed to be lost, but in fact she was secretly overjoyed. Inside and outside of a high mountain, black clouds connect with birds, and the green walls carry the sound of apes. The umbrella girl looked at the pair of teenagers and girls with high identities, but the world seemed to like them and they were low on the ground. She likes him, he likes her, but she doesn't know which one she likes. Crane cloak scribes complained endlessly. It turned out to be a wave of unresolved waves. There are only 3 cross-Jianglong dragons that can't be provoked from the top of the mountain. How come even the local snakes from Hahuan Mountain have come? Is it possible that they will meet on a narrow road and come to a fight? The sword-carrying boy was still saying some shameless words over there. "Palace Master Bai, just have 100 hearts." With me here the sky won't fall. Crane Cloak Scribe smiled bitterly. Then I thank you. The sword-backed boy nodded and said, I have always had a good relationship with the surnamed Bai. Since they are my own brothers there is no need to be polite.